All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 10 o'clock. We ready to rock and roll? All right. And do we have Commissioner Jung on the phone? All right, perfect. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is August 24th. It is 10 a.m. This is the regular meeting for the Board of Commissioners for Washoe County. And at this time, Chief Deputy Clark, will you lead us in the pledge, sir? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chief Deputy. All right, Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Of course. Bob Lucy, Chair.
Here.
Von Hartung, Vice Chair.
Here.
Alexis Hill. Here. Katie Jung via phone.
Present.
Thank you. Jeannie Herman. Here. County Manager Eric Brown.
Here.
Assistant or Deputy District Attorney Mary Canderas. Here. And I'm Jan Galasini, your County Clerk. Sir, you have a quorum.
Marvelous. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager, that takes us to item 3, sir.
Item 3 is a presentation by Bill Hawk, Tumwa Water Supply Administrator, on the status of Tumwa's water supply and upstream drought reserves. He's in chambers with us this morning.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Bill Houck for the record, Truckee Meadows Water Authority. So I was asked to come in here and give you a brief water supply update. So for those of you who frequent downtown, you might have noticed this weekend that the river looks a little different than it has been lately. Right now, flows are less than half of what they had been flowing at the state line and through town. And this is because all of the stored water in Boca Reservoir that's used to make the required rate of flow at the California-Nevada state line has been exhausted. So late last week, the federal water master began ratcheting down the outlet gates at Boca Reservoir. And it was a pretty sharp drop off. And by Saturday, like I said, flows were roughly half of what they are now. Or what they were, and over the course of the next 2 months, flows will continue to drop as that required rate of flow obviously can no longer be met. That required rate of flow is measured at the California-Nevada state line, and Lake Tahoe is also used to make that required rate of flow at the California-Nevada state line, and there's only about a foot of stored water left in Lake Tahoe as well, and that's going to continue to drain. So that by the end of October, there'll be no more stored water in Lake Tahoe as well. All 17 outlet gates are open right now. What's being passed to the Truckee River is what's coming out. Over the last 4 years, we've actually operated normally in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And what this shows is basically 80 to 85% of the community's supply comes directly from the Truckee River. The remainder's from groundwater pumping. We turn on our wells in the spring and get us through the summertime peaking season and turn them off again in the fall. But we also operated normally last year as well, despite the fact that that was a dry year or the first year of this drought. And that's because we had ample storage upstream in Lake Tahoe and Boca Reservoirs, which was used to make that required rate of flow. So despite it being a dry year last year, we were able to operate normally. But this year was our second dry year in a row, 68% normal snowpack on April 1st. Basically solidified the fact that this region is in a drought. We have now been for some time in what's considered an extreme drought by the drought monitor. Runoff this year into Lake Tahoe was 11% of normal, and the runoff at the Truckee River at state line was about 33% of normal. So by the end of this month, early September, we're going to have to begin releasing drought reserves from upstream to keep our surface water treatment plants online and our customers in water, because there won't be enough water in the river otherwise. So we'll begin releasing water from Lake Tahoe, ramping up groundwater production, and then releasing some water from Donner Lake to keep our surface water treatment plants online. And I'm estimating by the time that's all said and done, in about 6-7 weeks, we'll use about 5,400 acre feet of upstream storage. But that's okay, because our upstream storage right now is in really great shape. from a water supply perspective, this community couldn't be in better shape. Right now, we have almost 52,000 acre-feet stored upstream. If you were to combine all the reservoir storage upstream, about 20% of that is owned by Tumwa right now. So, in this 52,000 acre-feet is about twice as much as we had in storage during the last drought, coming into the last drought. So, really in great shape. Despite that, and despite how long this drought persists, Tumwa will find a way to keep its customers in water and continue to supply them with a reliable supply for as long as this drought ends up persisting. But I will tell you that the fact that Lake Tahoe is going to go below the rim by November, and the fact that there's no carryover storage in Tahoe or Boca or any of the other reservoirs coming into this winter, flows in the Truckee next year will be entirely dependent on precipitation and next year's snowpack. So it's not a great position to be in, but we do have ample drought storage, and we'll continue to provide our customers with a reliable supply of high-quality drinking water for as long as the drought persists. With that, I'll take questions.
Mr. Houck, thank you very much for the presentation. Is there any questions? Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Houck, thank you, and we've seen this, we see it regularly at Tumwa. But talk to us about the timing of storage, because I know that there are requirements in terms of the snowpack and the release, and when we can actually start storing. I know that Tumwa and the Tumwa board has been very proactive in trying to get the water master to change that timing. So can you give us just kind of a little insight as to how we're dealing with earlier runoffs and less snow?
Sure. You know, in a normal year when we have a normal snowpack, it's really not an issue because runoff really doesn't begin until April. But in a dry year like this, if we were to come into another dry year and you know, we get some snow, you would expect that runoff would occur earlier, sometime in February, certainly by March. And with the federal upstream reservoirs, the way they're managed now, we can't begin closing down the outlet gates till April 10th. So oftentimes in a dry year like this, a lot of that runoff flows on downstream, right, and we're not able to capture it. So Tumwa actually secured a grant 2 years ago, and we're working right now with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation to come up with a new way to manage these federal reservoirs differently in the wintertime for flood control so that we can capture this earlier runoff. But as it stands right now, we can't begin closing the outlet gates until about April 10th. So that's just how it is and now until those regulations are changed, but we're working on that.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bill. Great update. For the community out there, what's the message that we really want to make sure that we get out? I want to make sure that we tell them the right thing about conservation, and then also that Tumwa's got a good plan.
You bet. You know, and I'll start with conservation. We're asking our customers to just keep doing what you're doing, water responsibly, water wisely. You know, we do have some additional enhanced conservation measures. You know, we're enforcing this year. We have an additional water watchers out there in the community who are going out and educating customers on ways to save water. And we do have some additional restrictions as far as watering hours. We're asking customers not to water between the hours of 11 and 7, whereas typically it would be noon and 6. But because we are in a drought, you know, we're asking customers to take that extra step. And we're also, right now, we have what I would call an enhanced media outreach campaign where we're, you know, I'm sure you've heard our commercials on TV and on the radio spots. But I think the message is, hey, we are in a drought. We recognize that. It's all around us. But as far as making a water supply for our customers, it's not an issue because we have ample drought storage. We have really twice as much as we did during the last drought. And we're in really great shape. And as long as people continue to just use the resource wisely and water responsibly, you know, it's all good.
Great. Commissioner Jung, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And two things. Number one, I'm so glad that the water authority is owned by us, the people, rather than speculators. And that's why we know exactly what's going on with our water and our money that we pay for it. And also have 2 members of our board that keep an eye on that. I think this the issue of where we're out in the drought and what resources we have really brings home what the vice chairman has been saying about reclaiming water, because obviously the more tools we have in our tool shed and levers that we can pull is going to make the difference of our stability in this. And so I am, deeply grateful for the watchful eyes of government on the citizen-owned water board. And I'm also saying Commissioner Vice Chairman Hartung had a crystal ball how many years ago? 8 years ago, about pursuing other ways to recycle the water that we are so dependent on the federal water master and TROA and other people's good graces to be able to provide all of the services that we enjoy down here. So well done, bravo. I love Tumwa. I have no questions ever about Tumwa because I know it's a publicly owned operation and everything is public record for all the customers of them. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Mr. Houck, I have a couple questions for you too. In regards to, we talk about surface water supply and our upstream supply. In account of, when you take into account the recharge that we've done and through our aquifers, when you talk about pulling from our wells, how is the supply within our aquifers and how is that looking?
Yeah, as far as impacts to the water table from our production
Correct.
wells, there's been none. And we have a real proactive ASR program, Aquifer Storage and Recovery, where in the winter months we take surface water from the Truckee River, treat it at Chalk Bluff Water Treatment Plant, and can inject that in basically any of our wells within our service territory. And we strategically target some wells during the winter months. Strategically, I mean, we'll target recharge or ASR at wells where we've hit harder or run harder during the summer, and it does offset pumping that we've done in the summer months. But as far as negative impacts to the groundwater supply, there's been none that I'm aware of. And actually, we've been able to, since acquiring the Washoe County DWR, Tumwa has been able to move surface water up into that Mount Rose fan area and rest a lot of those big production wells, which were having negative impacts on the water supply. So.
Awesome, fantastic. And then as it pertains to, the Truckee River, obviously, as Commissioner Jung pointed out, there are challenges with TROA and, making sure that we have enough supply downriver to a number of the users. But when we get to these types of months, I get concerned as a sportsman. I get concerned about the wildlife and some of the usages. Is that, the depletion in the river? Are we going to see some real challenges for the wildlife within the Truckee River, or no? Or maybe I'm asking a question that's not.
Well, no, I mean it's this is a cycle. This wet and dry cycle. This is we are in a drought right now, but just 2 years ago we were in a flood. 2017 was almost record flooding on the Truckee, and here we are, a couple of years later, and we're in a drought again. But what's going to go on right now with the river is basically we're in what I would call a priority place right now, where the most senior water right holders are the ones getting water. And the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe is one of the most senior water right holders on the Truckee River system right now. And so they're getting the water that they're entitled to keep the fish in water and the wildlife in water. And Tumwa's getting a certain portion of their water right too, to keep our customers in water. So that's what's going on right now, is when those required rates of flow at the state line are met, all water right holders are basically able to exercise their water right. But since that's not, that required rate of flow isn't able to be met, only the most senior water right holders are able to divert right now, I guess I'll say. And one of those is the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe. So, and there's some other water that's coming down from Stampede and Prosser reservoirs right now, which are also, some of that water is going to the tribe as well. So. You would expect that in a dry year, though, like this,
Right.
The wildlife and the river look different. So, but there's still water in the river. There's going to be water in the river for the foreseeable future.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Houck. Any other questions? All right, Mr. Houck, thank you so much for your presentation today. We really do appreciate you coming in and sharing that with us. All right. Mr. Manager, we are on to item 4, sir.
Item 4 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call public comment?
Of course, Janet Butcher is up first, followed by Chastity Martinez.
Welcome, Ms. Butcher.
I used to like being first, but oh well. Since I can't, since it's dictated that I have to address the board as a whole, I'd like to say that the four-way stop at Sunset Springs and Omni is appreciated. Also, I appreciate the commission's acknowledgement of Drug Overdose Awareness Day, which is on August 31st. However, what other than awareness on paper and in the records is the board willing to do? The borders are still open to the cartel and drug smugglers. Fentanyl is a killer. This year alone has seen a 34% increase in overdoses in Nevada. And not all the data has been reported yet. It's not been made available, which brings me to the next issue with the open borders. Human trafficking, for which Nevada is #1 in the nation, and the untested and tested positive for COVID influx of illegals being dropped into our community. Still, sounds of silence on the issue from the board. From what I understand, the newly FDA-approved drug is not the one that is being made available at this time. People are being misled. I also want to say, let's pray for our fellow citizens that have been abandoned in Afghanistan.
Thank you, Ms. Butcher.
Next up, we have Chastity Martinez, followed by Cindy Martinez.
Welcome, Ms. Martinez.
Morning.
Good morning.
My first time giving public comments, I'm a little nervous. My name is Chastity Martinez, and I am here with Faith in Action Nevada. You guys had a few folks from our organization come last week to give public comment about recommendations to the Washoe County Board of Commissioners on how best to utilize the $91.5 million they are receiving from the American Rescue Plan. We've been in conversations with different community members, faith communities, and nonprofit leaders who are on the ground helping our most vulnerable in our community during this pandemic. And some of the issues that we've had in our community pre-pandemic, such as lack of affordable housing and mental health, have only exacerbated over the last year and a half. We understand the county is taking over the housing issue and primarily the CARES campus. So in order to make sure that it's successful, we asked the county to consider the need for more supportive housing with housing that has wraparound services. Some people need the emergency shelter, but others need more support. We also need more low-income housing for families. We see multi-generational families crowding together in 1 or 2 bedroom apartments because that's all that is available or all they can afford. In connection with lack of housing, mental health continues to be an issue here in Nevada, as Nevada ranks dead last in terms of mental health across the nation. Our community needs better access to mental health resources, as well as a more investment in suicide prevention. I especially want to lift up the need for youth mental health resources, as we saw an increased rate in teenage suicide throughout this pandemic, and we need more adequate youth services or better counseling services. Other recommendations we have include more affordable childcare, as well as public transportation. When the majority of someone or a family's income is going towards rent or mortgage, it's difficult to be able to afford childcare and transportation as well. We need to create better, cleaner, more efficient public transportation, especially for our neighbors in the North Valleys, to make sure they have access to the resources that they need. And when we look at all these issues together and the connection between them, it's easy for these things to compound and keep individuals and families trapped in cycles of poverty. But we have an opportunity with this funding to invest in our community and start to tackle these complex issues. It is also our hope that the county would consider creating more public forums where people can come and give their thoughts on where we think that this money should be used for, similar to how the state is doing for theirs. And we know that these things won't happen overnight, but by investing in the right programs or funneling funds even directly to nonprofits already doing the work on the ground, we can create long-term sustainable solutions. We're hoping to build a collaborative effort and a moral vision amongst other organizations here in Washoe County so that we can not only recover from this pandemic, but create a new normal. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
Cindy Martinez, followed by Melanie Sutton.
Welcome, Ms. Martinez.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the commission, Mr. Manager, Madam Secretary, Madam Assistant District Attorney. It's been a while since I've been here. I've just come from California after caring for my family. My mother suffered as a stroke post one of these wonderful FDA-approved injections. So I've not had time to present any exhibits. I've presented many, many pieces of information, as well as many of my fellow citizens have done the same. And we have come to the conclusion that our elected representation is not responsive to the concerns of the citizenry regarding this abuse of power under NRS 414. What I would say, though, is our continued concern about passports that are being considered. The governor has implemented one for, I guess, events over 4,000 people in Allegiant Stadium, which translates also to concerts, etc. I don't know if you've seen anything what's been going on across the world, but in France, those who have not received a vaccination or have a passport are being forcibly restricted from entering grocery stores. In Australia, the Aussies are being hunted in the street if they dare stray from their homes. It's the most locked down country on the planet. Canadians are currently being removed from their homes and transported to health hotels if they're not vaccinated or test positive. Our own CDC has implemented, effective last summer, a guideline for green zones where they, if you've looked at it, where there's a framework for COVID camps. If you think I'm nuts, look it up. The Romanians and Danes have rolled back their restrictions because they understand the fallacy and the fraudulent nature of these restrictions. California and Florida have statutes buried that, in their framework, which allows for the forcible incarceration of people in case of an outbreak of a disease and forcible vaccination. Look it up. The Tennessee governor similarly signed an executive order implementing similar framework. And our very own chair here penned a letter to the governor about the vaccination efforts being stalled by the mask mandate and the fervent refusal of the citizenry to wear masks. And I guess we're miscreant children not following the rules. And I would wonder if members of this commission who have children are willing to submit their sons to an injection that will damage their hearts or render their daughters infertile. What I would say to the chair of this commission in his collaboration with the governor is that once you kneel, they won't let you get back up.
Melanie Sutton.
As every week that we come here, we are asking for the end of the public health emergency. Obviously, no one's going to listen. With the FDA supposedly approving this within a year, I don't even see how that's possible because it takes 5 to 10 years normally, and we still don't know what the results are going to be of people taking the vaccine. I have a nephew that has a heart condition, a very rare heart condition, and this would probably kill him. And if people are forcing people to take this this shot, we don't know how many people are going to be affected by it a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We don't know. And the fact that it's being forced upon our people is pretty sad. So yes, I want to end the public health emergency. The masks do nothing. We know this. You guys obviously are not reading the science. And I thought it was my body, my choice, but I guess that's not the case anymore, right? Unless it's to kill a baby, which is not my body. It would be the baby's body. Yeah, so I want into the public health emergency. This is getting out of hand. It's tyranny, and we should we are Americans, and we should be able to have the choice to what goes inside our body. So yeah, please end the public health emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Sutton.
And then for the record, I do have emails submitted from Pamela Sigdinos, Rob Pierce, Carol Black, and Jan Bishop.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing no further public comment, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. Mr. Manager, we are on to item 5, sir.
Item 5 is Commissioners, County Managers' announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commissions updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
All right. Mr. Manager, do you have anything for us this morning?
Mr. Chair, I would just point out that in the consent agenda, item 8F, as in Frank 1, we are acknowledging the Distinguished Budget Award for fiscal year 2020-2021. So I would be remiss if I didn't give kudos to our comptroller, Kathy Hill, our budget group led by Lori Cook, as well as our CFO, Christine Valetich. I just wanted to point that out. That's it, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Commissioner Herman, I have you signed in first this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have two things. Due to this drought and our ambition to build a lot more homes, I'm just thinking that this board has the responsibility of maybe slowing down some of the growth to make sure that the citizens that own property, live here, that have lived here for a long, long time, are protected. And the word moratorium, I know probably sounds like a death knell to some people, but I think that it's something worth thinking about. And then we still have a chance to stop this health emergency in our county. We still could do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Harton, I have signed in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank the citizen for noticing the stop signs going in Bridle Path. There's a number of places that they're going in. We're proactively trying to change the way we do business in terms of speed control devices, speed cushions, and other things in neighborhoods that will slow people down. So we are working on that. Mr. Chairman, I would like to work with staff to make sure that any projects that come into the planning department meet those standards and have speed controls already built into them, as opposed to trying to retrofit our communities. It's overwhelming for us. And as you know, you and I worked collaboratively on getting RTC to fund a program that gives more money to the 3 municipalities to address these issues in the side streets that RTC would not normally work on. So we're working on this, and there are a number of places. I know in your own district you've been working. I know that there's issues all over the place. Many of the commissioners, of course, have issues in the cities, but we're trying. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Hill, I have you signed in next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that there are a lot of concerns about fire that is happening and air quality, and if you are looking to support people who are being displaced by the fires, you can go to redcross.org. And if you want to specifically support the fires happening around our region, you can, it's /local/California/gold-country is where you can find that information. And then we had a really great proclamation presented last week about emergency readiness. And I think this is a great time for folks to go to readywashoe.com and see how they can prepare their families for any risk of evacuation or emergency, so we're all prepared. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Commissioner Jung, do you have anything this morning?
I do, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so very much. I have a more macro observation, and then it's a call for action. I brought this up last week, and I am now asking the rest of the commission and citizens, but those of you that serve on other boards and commissions, can you ask for an agenda item on each of those and talk about the whatever the bailiwick of that board or commission you're on, talk about this air quality and the fact that we have got to band together as a county and figure out a way to become consequential to decisions that are made to the west of us that absolutely critically harm us. I don't want us to get used to this. This is not normal. This is an unmitigated disaster. And I feel like we haven't had a voice because I don't think we've moved to have that voice. And I don't want this to be the new normal. This needs to have our input and, if needed, our resources to make sure that we don't live under weather predictions that, I quote, say, smoky skies indefinitely. So I'm asking for that to be put on this agenda as a standing item, and I'm asking on my other boards and commissions, senior services, parks and rec, all have a nexus, as we all, biology does, in this type of air inequality or the lack of quality in this air. And so I'm asking all of you to please help me get a voice into this. I know there's federal issues, there's state issues, but dang it, we live right here and we experience this and have no lever we can pull, zero. So I'm begging you guys, please, let's not let this become inconsequential to those who have the resources, money, power, and decision making. Because I hate to put this out there because I don't want to get into any more personal or nasty disagreements, but I believe deeply in my heart that if this smoke was flowing to the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, this smoke would be arrested. We wouldn't even have heard about this. It'd have been one and done and out. So, and that's because there is consequence. These frontier counties in California have no representative consequence because they truly are in the minority. And then we have no consequence in which to say, knock it off. This is not sustainable. So that's the end of my my call to action. I'm very serious about it. And then I want to congratulate the vice chairman. We were going to go under sneak attack at night and put up some stop signs in Spanish Springs, but now we learned we don't have to do that. So bravo, Mr. Chairman or Mr. Vice Chairman, and great job to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. You know, and Commissioner Jung brings up a very valid point. The smoke is very impactful, not only just to our community and to our overall health. You know, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, this is more hazardous than anything we've been dealing with in the last couple of years. You know, when you look at it from a level of tourism, you know, flights are canceled in and out of Reno Tahoe Airport today. We have the Great Reno balloon races that are coming up in the next week or two. Those are, you know, obviously at the chance of being canceled if this air quality does not improve. And so much that we do and rely upon in regards to our tourism, our economy, is heavily reliant on our ability for that clean air and the weather that we do receive here in the high desert of Nevada. And so it's unique that we find ourselves in this position, and it's frustrating at the same time that we are solely and utterly dependent on California and their firefighting abilities, either U.S. Forest Service or CAL FIRE, to really address these issues. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating not that we can't really participate in a way that isn't impactful to us. Understanding that there are some times that there is out of everybody's control, but it is a challenge. So I would agree with Commissioner Jung. This is something that we need to bring to all of our boards and find some way to unify behind that understanding. Secondly, we did have an RSCVA board meeting last week. We will be looking at, for the commission and everybody's understanding, we are going to be looking at potentially bringing management services of all 4 of the current Convention Visitor Authority properties under the authority. It has been under the management of AMG for the last couple of years, and we feel that they have not performed under their duties of their contract, so we will be looking about bringing that back in. So that would be management of the Reno Livestock Event Center, Reno Sparks Convention Center, the bowling stadium, and the Reno Event Center downtown. So those 4 properties would be back into the management of that. So we're looking at that. Also, we are looking forward to welcoming the U.S. Conference of Mayors to the city of Reno next year, next July. And so that will be led by Mayor Sheevy at the city of Reno. And so we look forward to welcoming all the mayors from across the country to our beautiful area here in northern Nevada. Hopefully there's no smoke next summer. But very excited about bringing that and highlighting some of the great things that we're doing here across northern Nevada. So some pretty interesting stuff that's happening there. We're excited about that. And other than that, I have nothing else to report for you today. All right. Anything further from any of the commissioners? All right. Seeing none, we will close that. And we are on to item 6. Mr. Manager.
Item 6 is a presentation and update on FY 2021 fourth quarter status report from the Washoe County Regional Detention Facility to include security of the jail, conditions and confinement, staffing and medical care of inmates housed at the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. And today joining us is Chief Deputy Sheriff Jeff Clark.
Welcome, Mr. Clark, Chief Deputy. How are you?
Good morning, Chairman Lucy, Manager Brown, and the rest of the County Commission. So I'm here to present on the annual report, or the quarterly report for the Washoe County Jail, which will also include some annual data. First, the reason for this jail presentation is extremely important. Overall, it's for the safety and security of the Washoe County Jail and to give you an update on quarterly information. You've seen this slide before. From the start of the pandemic, the Washoe County Jail has taken the pandemic extremely serious because we do have a large amount of inmates in a custodial environment, and the spread has been concerning from the start. But we have and will continue to take necessary precautions. This slide shows you that overall there's been 156 positive infections for this fiscal year, and the rest are quarterly stats, 15 positive infections this quarter in intake and booking, and that's generally the area where arrestees come in from multiple different agencies. 107 inmates have been tested, and we are currently using the state laboratory and starting to go away from rapid scan tests just because of the affectability. 29 total inmates positive for this quarter. As far as inoculation goes, for this quarter, 192 inmates inoculated. They were all used the Janssen, and as far as high risk, 95 high risk inmates, 13 over the age of 65. Medical statistics for this quarter. On this first slide, what I would bring to your attention would be the mental health evaluations obviously continue to be related to the population that we're serving, but we are seeing an ongoing increase in mental health services at the jail. You can see towards the bottom of the slide, patients on some type of mental health medication averages around 550 inmates. This next slide, what I would highlight is the MAT appointments continues to increase. MAT stands for Medication Assisted Treatment. This is a new federally and state certified program that we started at the Washoe County Jail. We're one of less than 20 jails in the entire nation to have a actually certified medication-assisted treatment program. And this assists us in treating inmates and certainly providing handoff to resources within our community. More fourth quarter medical statistics as far as discharge referrals, special need flags, ER referrals. These are referrals that are inmates that are in our custody that for some reason need to be referred to the emergency room and have medical conditions above what our staff can provide. Worker clearances is important as all of our kitchen services, inmate work programs are run by our inmate population. Grievances are 79 for the quarter, and medical refusals, which is actually arrestees that do not meet the criteria and need clearance through emergency room services. New this quarter, we, because of the increased mental health population, we were forced to reorganize our housing units. A couple changes that you will see on your next tours is the Housing Unit 3, our general mental health unit, is now taking just the female intake and our mental health female population. Moving down to the bottom of the slide, you can see that we turned Housing Unit 16, which is one of the newer housing units, into an entire mental health unit for male inmates. And I encourage you to come look at it. We are doing some transformational treatment that is going to be nationally recognized in that mental health unit. Prior to me leaving for training a few weeks ago, I spent time in this unit, and the deputies are working with our mental health team to provide very unique opportunities to this population. When I went in there, they had the entire unit out, which is amazing in and of itself based on their ability to get along with others, had the entire unit out together doing some physical fitness and group activities, and it was truly amazing. And our staff, I can't congratulate enough, but we are going to see positive change with that. Housing Unit 17 is where our administrative segregation or stat inmates are held, along with our severely mentally ill that just cannot be trusted with other inmates. Continuing on with the mental health concerns, we are at a capacity for our special watch. We are still waiting for cells 1 and 2 and intake to be converted to special watch cells. That is with capital improvements currently. Suicide attempts, as you know, last quarter were up 136%. This quarter we've done a great job. As we always do when we see a trend, suicide attempts were down by 88% this quarter from 26 to 3. That also depends on the inmates population that we have. When suicidal tendency inmates are housed at the sheriff's office for long periods of time, you'll see that goes up because they continuously test our staff and try to attempt suicide. Averted also went down this quarter, not as much, but it did go down 10% from 277 to 250 last quarter. The Bunk Project is moving forward. As you know, this was to get rid of any gaps in bunks where inmates could tie off or attempt to hurt themselves. And there's going to be over 700 bunks that are being fabricated. Into fourth quarter average daily population, as you can see, we are still down from a 4-year trend. However, we are up from last year. This is more of an annual. So you can see the comparative analysis from years past, this is from years past. So you can see since fiscal year 2017-18, we have gone down. Partially, due to COVID the last 2 years, but this is actually a good trend, and this means that all the agencies are really working together to try to ensure that the people that we're arresting and the people that are within our jail system are those that are a danger to our citizens. The average length of stay, again, the quarterly statistics, you can see that from 17-18, we've gone up. Again, some due to COVID, some due to the bail reform, if you will. The next slide is a comparative analysis for annually, and that shows, again, the large increase. I do have staff looking into it so they can peel back the layers and try to identify specifically why we're up, just under 2 days from just 4 years ago. Again, it's difficult because we are facing very challenging times right now within the jail. Next slide is batteries. I am happy to report that fights have been down. This shows that this quarter, 51 inmate on inmate, 1 on staff, and 54 fights averted. Suicide averts remain consistent. Attempts were down this month, and we've had 0 in custody deaths, not only for the quarter, but for this fiscal year, knock on wood. This shows the fights and the decrease that we've had in fights. And this, again, is our staff doing an exceptional job based on what they're dealing with. They're dealing with a increased mental health population, and the job is very, very difficult working in this environment daily. And our staff continues, knowing that fights were up, they work their butts off, and this is a testament to our staff. But total fights were down significantly over the last 4 years. Next slide, again, I've talked ad nauseum about the Detention Services Unit and the Inmate Assistance Program. This slide shows the statistics for the quarter. More importantly, this slide shows the savings from diversion. We know diversion works based on time, temporal, right? And so because this is the dramatic decrease based on COVID and our population, but does not necessarily represent the hard work that they are continuing to try as far as diverting inmates out into services within the community. But just like the jail, I think we represent the community or match the community pretty well. And we are facing problems with mental health community-wide. And as with my other presentations, I like to try to highlight certain units within the Washoe County Detention Facility. This quarter, I'm talking about our inmate work program. This is an amazing program within the jail, certainly based on the staff that we have, or the minimal staff that we have. The staffing is currently 8 inmate work program leaders. We currently have 2 vacancies. Each work crew has between 3 and 5 inmates, and the supervisor is, the unit's run by Mike Chirac. The overall mission is to ensure overall cleanliness and hygiene of the facility. And again, I can't speak highly enough of our work supervisors during COVID, even when we couldn't use inmate work crews and because of quarantines and things like that, the work supervisors went and did the work themselves. And they stepped up and were disinfecting the entire facility from the front doors to the back, administration, operations, along with detention. Just an amazing group of individuals. They schedule and coordinate work crew assignments. They train crew members. Obviously, there's a standard that they have to give them some training, whether that's in the kitchen or on these work crews. But they do a number of different things from grounds work to custodial work, painting, light construction, snow removal. When I was up in Incline, we started touting Incline as a graffiti-free community, and that was because of our work programs. Anytime we would find graffiti up in Incline Village, the inmate work crews would come up and abate that, and we want to get back to that. They also maintain adequate inventory throughout the sheriff's office as far as tools and supplies and replacement parts for different work crews. And then their biggest thing is community service. They are dedicated to providing cleanup, graffiti removal, and maintenance services throughout Washoe County, not just the detention facility, but other public entities as well. I talked about the Incline Village Partnership, and then currently working closely with our HOPE team, the Homeless Outreach Proactive Engagement Team, to clean up camps and really work with this community. This following slide are just some of the partners that our inmate work programs work with, and you can see that it is really across our community, and a shout out to our inmate work program leaders. And that is all I have for you. I hope the presentation was timely enough, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Chief Deputy, I do appreciate it. Commissioner Hill, I'll have you signed in first this morning.
Thank you, Chief Deputy Clark. I really appreciate the presentation. On these mental health inmates, do you think, and the 988 call center that we're working on regionally for mental health calls will improve and perhaps ensure that fewer of these people are getting into the jail?
Well, that is the hope, ma'am, and I am on the 988 Coalition to help. I think it's, we're going to have to see as it goes. We're hoping certainly that separating mental health from 911 is going to be a service to the community. We're really discussing response now, if that response looks like mental health providers, or what we would prefer as mental health providers and some type of law enforcement, not necessarily for enforcement side, but more for protection for our social services and social workers.
And what's the timeline, do you know, on the 988?
It's supposed to be implemented next summer, so
Okay.
I believe July 1st.
Okay, that's great to hear. And how can we support working regionally to ensure that people who maybe shouldn't be arrested and should get some sort of different services, how do we work with our regional partners at Sparks and Reno and the Sheriff's Office to make sure that we're not arresting people just because they're annoying or, you know, causing a scene, essentially?
Well, first, ma'am, I would say that our regional partners, we work very, very well with the Reno Police Department and Sparks Police Department. It is a challenge. It's a challenge because there's a lot of moving parts. They have business development, downtown developments to deal with, and but you've seen the number of bookings have continued to decrease, and that I think is a testament to Reno and Sparks' willingness to work with us and listen and understand that that as we increase the number of programs and opportunities such as the CARES campus, that we're encouraging partners to utilize those. And I think, again, continuing those discussions, we meet with all agency heads together monthly and talk about these important and emerging issues.
That's great. That's great to hear. On your inmate work program, it's fantastic, and it's so great that you have so many partners. How can we get more women working in your inmate work program? That was one of the things that was brought up to me of just, you know, we don't get as many assignments as the men, and I was curious, you know, what support can we provide you at the jail to make sure that there's some equity there?
I appreciate the question. Our number one responsibility at the jail is safety and security. And trying to manage a population where you mix male and female inmates is always extremely challenging, and we just don't have the staffing available to do that, to mix those populations. Females make up less than a quarter of the inmate population. We are looking at different opportunities of having them work different units, not necessarily work crews, but certainly laundry and different things like that to give them more opportunities, and those will continue to expand.
Great. Well, please put in your next budget request, if that is, staffing is needed, I think that we need to make sure that, people are staying busy and we're giving them opportunities to do things while they're there. So
I appreciate
please
that, ma'am.
keep us posted on that. And then one more quick question on your release of inmates policy. I think you discussed this maybe in a presentation ago or 2 presentations ago. Do you just release inmates at one time during the day when they're, the judge has ordered release, or when their time is up? Or is there multiple times during a day when you release inmates?
So we have 2 major release times, and those are for time served.
Okay.
Or the courts doing time served, or when inmates go to court for sales also utilized. So they are keeping up with the needs. One of the positives that I've seen, over the last couple years is the mental health. They've foot the bill and increased the mental health and the mental health services and programs. They've done that on their own because they're in contract, but they continue to understand our needs. The company is growing, but the nice thing is it's a one owner company, and so I have immediate contact with the CEO if I need it, but we have several layers that understand our jail and our community and our needs.
Okay, well, that's good enough for me. I'm just here to say, I hope you and the sheriff know, I'm just here to help. If you're not satisfied or you're not getting what you need, that's when I'm happy to come in, and we just want to support you, dude. I mean, that's totally what it is, and I know you have a lot of need for support. So please know that that's why I'm asking you about that. And just saying, I'm here, use me where you need me, but it sounds like you've got it working to where you believe it to a performance standard that you're okay with, and that makes me okay too. So thank you very much, and thank you for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, thank you.
You always
Commissioner.
have given us great support. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for being here, Deputy Chief Clark. I don't know whether they're interchangeable. Jeff, I
Yes, call me
appreciate
Jeff.
it. And many of my questions have been answered. There were great questions from other members, but a couple. Have we suspended the work program due to the air quality index or the AQI?
Yeah, we do not allow the inmates or the work
Good.
programs to go outside during these times. We constantly monitor the air quality index through Air Now,
Okay.
and yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so that was just I pretty much knew the answer, but I wanted to just get that on record because people may not realize that we're not pushing them outside unnecessarily.
Yes, sir. On that also, whenever there's a air quality index or air quality problems such as we are facing currently and have been, we also don't allow inmates to go out in the yards.
In the yard,
which,
right.
again, provides some mental health for the inmates because they get to go outside
Yeah.
and breathe fresh air and just get outside, and so we don't allow that.
Fresh air?
Excuse me?
Is that what that is, fresh air?
Not well. We don't allow that during these times. So
Yeah,
they're in their
I
house.
couldn't believe how bad it was last night out in Spanish Springs. It was smothering. It was unbelievable. It was much better this morning, still very high, but anyways, I digress. My real question is, talk about video arraignments. What's the percentage of video arraignments that you're doing right now? Do you know?
Well,
Are they mostly video
they're
arraignments?
all video arraignments
They're all?
when
Okay.
somebody first comes into the facility,
Okay,
yes.
good.
And we work and we constantly work. Before I left for SMIP, I actually had a meeting with some of the lower courts and the judges, and they have been great to work with. And
Good.
we have to balance the need for in-person trials
Yes.
and in-person visits by the inmates, but they're also understanding that transporting inmates comes with some sort of risk. And so we're working together on that, and
And a huge cost.
yes.
It's very costly. So I'm pleased that we've kind of, we're moving that direction where there's just no reason why, especially arraignments, they can't occur. And I think it's a great use of technology, and I commend the sheriff's office and the court system for working through that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. Clark, I do have a couple questions for you in regards to some of the statistics as it pertains to violent crime. Have we seen just in this last year, an increase in violent crime in our community?
Well, sir, as you can imagine, given the jail status report, I'm not prepared to discuss, crime in our community. I know that violent crime is up. To what degree, I can't answer that question. And I can answer, is it based on the growth of our community? So are those increases as a result from the increase in our population? I don't know, but I will certainly bring back and discuss it with Sheriff Balaam and Chief Herrera, who oversees operations.
Okay, because I was just wondering based upon the bookings, if you had that information. If not, that's fine. And so with the support from NAFCARE, when do you anticipate, obviously they were having challenges with staffing. When do you anticipate them having a full staff within the mental health and because I know they've been trying to backfill some of the positions. When do you anticipate that being online?
Well, it ebbs and flows, to be honest with you. Staffing in correctional environments is difficult at times, and so they hire more staff than needed, and they come up to the minimum standard, and then it drops off. They are currently on a high. They've offered staffing, hiring bonuses and different things, and again, to our benefit, when local hospitals lay off or things like that, then we get at max staffing. So it does ebb and flow. I will look into the numbers and report that more on their staffing next quarterly report. But again, it's up and down.
Okay, and they've been in constant conversation with you, and you guys have had a pretty good back and forth with them. So they're being responsive.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And just for the commission, their contract is up next June 30th, and there is still 1 2-year extension that is available.
Okay, great. All right, seeing nothing further, Mr. Clark, thank you so much for coming today. We really do appreciate it, and good to see you as always.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Manager, we are on to our donations, and I am going to ask the Vice Chairman to read our donations today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 71A1, rather. Recommendation to accept a cash donation of $100,000 from the Brock Pierce Foundation in support of increased demand for fire and emergency medical services in the Gerlach Fire Station response area. And all I would say, Mr. Chairman, and you know this, TM has stepped up and worked with Gerlach, even though they're outside technically of the service area. And so we are genuinely appreciative of these kinds of donations and the support from the community.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. And to the Brock Pierce Foundation, very much I appreciate $100,000. Obviously those services cannot continue to be as responsive if we didn't have that kind of funding. So with that, I am looking for a motion to accept the donation.
That was in the form of a motion.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Herman. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any public comment on this item, Madam Clerk?
There's nobody signed in.
Seeing no public comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all commissioners voting. All right, we are on to our consent agenda. This is item 8. Mr. Manager, is there anything in the consent agenda today that we need to pull or alter prior to
No, Mr. Chair.
consideration? All right. Commissioners, is there anything that, Commissioner Herman, I have you signed in?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't need these pulled, but I'm looking at 8F2 and 8F3, and I just wanted to make a comment,
Okay,
because it is in relation to audits. So my conservation districts are requesting that I make a notice that they need audits of their organizations in order to get grants. So if we could have our people in the county that handle that, maybe possibly get that in order, I'd appreciate it very, very much.
all right, perfect. Any other comments from any of the commissioners in regards to the consent agenda this morning? All right, seeing none, at this time, I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as posted.
So moved.
I have a
Second.
motion, do I have a second? Do I have any public comment, Madam Clerk?
I have nobody signed in.
All right. I have a motion from Vice Chair Hartung, a second from Commissioner Hill. I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all commissioners voting. All right. We are on to, Mr. Vice Chair, do you have a block vote for us this morning?
For the board's consideration, Mr. Chairman, I would proffer items 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Okay, we have a motion for items 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All right. And seeing I have a motion and a second for a block vote, Mr. Manager, will you read those items into the record, sir?
Yes, item 9 is a recommendation to authorize MWH Constructors and KG Walters Construction, a joint venture, as the construction manager at risk, and approve the owner's CMR construction agreement to construct bioreactors 3 and 4, excavation and base slab early work package under a guaranteed maximum price agreement. GMP 3A, a separate guaranteed maximum price agreement for the South Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility 2020 expansion project in the amount of $5,118,278.74, and approve a separate project contingency owner allowance fund in the amount of $463,707.36. Item 10 is a recommendation to approve an amendment to the agreement for full service operation and maintenance of Washoe County sewer facilities between Washoe County and SPB Utility Services, Inc., effective through December 31st, 2024, to increase the major and minor maintenance funding in the amount of $150,000 from an amount not to exceed $500,000 to an amount not to exceed $650,000 on a calendar year basis. Item 12 is a recommendation to approve contract for armed and unarmed professional security services as a joinder pursuant to NRS 332.195 to the State of Nevada contract CETS number 19049, awarded to Allied Universal Security, retroactive July 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2021. Estimated expenditures are anticipated as $696,587 for Q1 FY22. If approved, authorize the purchasing and contracts manager to execute the agreement. Item 13 is a recommendation to approve the proposal of lease terms between Washoe County and State Street Plaza LLC, a Nevada limited liability company, for the county to occupy 7,308 square feet within the property located at 170 South Virginia Street for a 3-year term from September 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2024, to approve space for the Washoe County Housing and Homeless Services Division, and if approved, authorize the Assistant County Manager, Dave Solaro, to execute the lease and authorize the Assistant County Managers, Dave Solaro, to execute all agreements, warrants, and checks that are needed to facilitate the relocation of the Housing and Human Services Division. Project cost is $643,679.05 with a potential offset from the Health District contingent upon approval from the Washoe County District Board of Health, and approve the use of homeless fund contingency in the amount of $208,124 needed to support fiscal year 2022 costs, and if approved, direct the Comptroller's Office to make the necessary net zero budget appropriation transfers and cash transfers. Number 14 is a recommendation to approve an agreement for professional services between Washoe County and the Volunteers of America, Greater Sacramento area and Northern Nevada, to provide contracted staffing to operate the CARES campus for professional services through June 30th, 2022, not to exceed $6,783,767.64. Authorize the purchasing and contracts manager to execute the agreement upon approval of the interlocal agreement on homelessness by the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners. Item supports the development of CARES campus to expand capacity for those experiencing homelessness. Item number 15 is a recommendation to approve expenditures for Washoe County Regional Communication System solar panel and power system replacement at the Fox Mountain Communication Site for a cost not to exceed $385,660.70, as recommended by the Joint Operating Committee on July 30th, 2021, and to execute a change order to the system purchase agreement between Washoe County and Harris Corporation Communications Segment dated September 27th, 2018 to complete the solar power system installation.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. All right, we have a motion and a second. Items.
I have nobody signed in for any item.
All right, seeing none. Let's see here. Commissioner Herman, I do have you signed in.
I just wanted to make a comment about, thank you, Mr. Chair, about item 14. For years and years, Reno has been the welcoming city. But they've always thought that Washoe County should pay the bill for it. Just my thoughts.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. All right, so we have a motion. I have a motion and a second on the floor for items 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 15. I have no further public comment or discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, with all commissioners voting. All right. Now, Mr. Manager, that takes us back to item 11, sir.
Item 11 is a presentation and discussion by Gabrielle Enfield regarding a status update for the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund grant of $91,587,038 awarded to Washoe County pursuant to the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or ARPA, as we refer to it. And Mr. Chair, we have Ms. Enfield in chambers with us this morning.
Wonderful. Welcome, Ms. Enfield.
Good morning, Chair Lucy, County Commissioners. As you know, these funds that we've received are transformational opportunity for Washoe County, for the state, and for all of the jurisdictions that received funds. I'm just going to go through kind of our preliminary, this is our first beginning process to identify where these funds will be targeted to projects that focus on the greatest need in our community. I can read those. So this first slide is broken down by some of the specific categories for the fiscal recovery funds. I wanted to identify the categories and give some examples of some of the projects that would fall under these categories, as well as some preliminary estimates as far as funding. This is very preliminary, but we are about to submit our first recovery plan, and we need to estimate. This is nothing written in stone. It's really kind of our point in time, what we know right now, to be able to give to Treasury to say, based on what we know right now, this is what we expect to spend the intended uses for the funds. So I wanted to kind of break that out a little bit, and that's what this slide is based on, those categories. So when I came at the last board meeting on July 20th, and you accepted the award for the fiscal recovery funds, you provided some guidance on some guiding principles, specifically one-time projects and infrastructure, priority or preferred focus. Also, projects that don't cause us to have ongoing expenses that will be hitting the general fund for future years. Collaborative projects and collaborating with our regional partners whenever possible. And we want to look at projects that are transformational, innovative investments, such as what we did with the CARES funding, with the 2 other jurisdictions in the university for the wastewater study, something that is innovative and a great investment. Also aligning with the county strategic plan. We want our projects and need to ensure that our projects are providing equitable outcomes and that we serve underserved populations. And then projects that serve community issues by attacking the root causes, focusing on projects like childcare, mental health, and affordable housing are some examples. So we've begun some of the initial assessment for key needs in the area, and some of this initial assessment was focused on just really going and looking at what the work that the community has already done across the region and across many different organizations. There's a lot of planning documents that have been created, and as well as we also received a lot of information from departments about projects that they identified as needs. So looking at those 2 things and aligning with the fiscal recovery funds eligible activities, we've identified these key areas of need. Addressing health disparities, specifically when it directly influence social inequities. Promoting healthy childhood environments. We know that focusing on youth and children, creating a strong foundation for kids, and it also, those kinds of programs support economic development so that families can go to work when there's childcare. Building strong neighborhoods. We've talked a lot about affordable housing. We have a clear understanding of the need in the community. We also have a strong focus on foundational investments in stormwater and infrastructure for broadband in our underserved areas. And of course, addressing root causes for homelessness, a key component of what we've been working on in Washoe County. So as we move forward, one of the key things that we're focusing on right now is community engagement. Our objectives are, 1, to gather input from the community on priority needs, but also we want to increase awareness regarding all of our projects as those projects are identified and the outcomes as the projects move forward. So we will be creating a dashboard that the community can easily access information on projects as well as outcomes. We have stood up, our communications team has stood up a page on the manager's office page where the public can go and sign up, provide their email if they would like to participate in community engagement process. And so, and of course, ongoing as we begin activities, that is a great place to find out more about what's going on. But we will be pushing out information to folks that sign up to that, give us their email on that. So the approach for community engagement, of course, public outreach, we're going to gather information using surveys that are distributed in different languages and across all communication channels. We're going to be doing internal stakeholder assessments, so gathering information from the knowledgeable folks here at Washoe County and Washoe County leadership. Also external stakeholder outreach, doing topic-specific listening sessions with key stakeholders throughout the community. And then, as always, we want to have a regional approach and have topic-specific discussions with regional stakeholders in collaboration with our regional partners. Just to give you a little idea of our timeline, as you know, the funds must be allocated by December of 2024 and expended by the end of December of 2026. We'll be working through the community assessment, assessing community needs between now and probably through October. We expect to identify priority projects in January, and between January and the continuation of throughout the implementation of the projects will go through December of 26 for expenditure, and then reporting back so that people have information on that, on those projects. What's next? What are we doing right now? So our near-term next steps, just wanted to highlight there are some things that have already been implemented. Some of these expenses have come to the board already. You've seen the Nevada Cares Campus and Safe Camp project came to the board in July. Also, more recently, the WellCare support for supportive housing, and then soon the regional homeless services is additional. So some of these needs are immediate and will be addressed immediately. As I mentioned, we'll be gathering input on priorities and projects. That'll continue. We'll be identifying projects. And then through an application process, we'll be using Washoe County's grants network, eCivis, to do the application process. And then requesting information and requesting funds from the state of Nevada. So Washoe County received fiscal recovery funds, the state of Nevada received fiscal recovery funds. And as you heard at the last meeting from the state treasurer, they are going to jurisdictions, providing information. They're gathering information from the public as well, and they're seeking input on what kinds of projects to fund. So Washoe County intends to collaborate regionally for an ask to the state. We're also collaborating with the state on their community engagement. So the information that they receive from the public, especially in northern Nevada, about what needs the public is identifying, we'll receive that information as well. Just to quickly identify the reporting. We're at the point where we're about to submit our first interim report. This is the very first report on just expenditures. It'll be a pretty short report. We have just the items that I mentioned before, the Safe Camp and the CARES Campus, are really the expenditures through July 31st. This is a one-time report, and it will be due August 31st. The other report that's due August 31st is that recovery plan performance report, and that is more detail about how we intend to use the funds, how we intend to provide equity in our projects, and when this report will be completed, or next week, to be submitted to Treasury, and then it will be posted to our website and accessible to the public. And then that report will be provided annually thereafter on July 31st. And then we will continue to have quarterly reports that will report on projects. And all of the reporting that we provide to Treasury will also be available to the public on our website. And we will be developing a dashboard website that provides easy to access information to the public. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Sinfield. We do appreciate it. Commissioner Hill, I have you signed in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, thank you. I'm very excited about this process beginning, and I think it's in very capable hands. I just have some suggestions on public outreach. I know that you're looking at surveys, and it sounds like online surveys for the most part.
Well, we're working with a couple of vendors right now. So right now, we're going to be reviewing some demonstrations on different electronic services. So we'll be identifying what kind of methods we can use. We're investigating different methods.
Okay. What I have found is sometimes going to the people, especially folks who are underserved in our community, they don't have access to online resources or can't even find a survey that we would have, although I think an online survey is something we have to do. So I'm so glad you're doing that, especially in bilingual survey. So I'd like to see how can we get into the community the next few months. So I know the food bank, I just took a tour of the food bank, and they really want to be a partner with this ARP because they are serving disadvantaged groups. So they've offered to even have us set up a table at their events to get some feedback from people, maybe less formal, more just talking to people about what they need. Even some of our, opportunities that we're doing vaccination clinics, ways that we can talk to people in that way. Cab meetings, like I know my cab's so excited to get back to work, so getting input from the far-flung parts of our county, I know is really important. And then I was thinking we have balloon races and air races coming up, and we could also do some outreach, and I'm happy to work a booth. So if you're concerned about staffing, I would really be pleased to support those efforts. So thank you so much. That's the only input I have, and I'm very excited to get the process started.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm thankful for this, but I want to say I'm glad that the state is not in the middle. That's, I'm exhausted by that process. But what I didn't see is economic support for small businesses that were closed during the pandemic. What happened to them? Those guys and those gals that lost their businesses. I mean, shouldn't we be utilizing some of these monies to, a proportional share for those businesses that were closed down during the pandemic, and those people just literally went away?
We did do a program, and that is an allowable expense under these funds. We did do a program for small businesses with the CARES funding, and we did not have a lot of businesses that utilized that funding. So we hadn't targeted it as a project for this funding, but based on the need, that's something that it is an eligible expense.
Yeah, and so I question whether it is that the reason people didn't reach out to us is maybe that they didn't know that it was available, and you know, in some type of a campaign. I don't know.
Yeah,
Commissioner,
I don't know.
I might offer that.
Mr. Manager, please.
My observation would be, we offered it in the unincorporated areas of the county. And I think that has a lot to do
I see.
with the acceptance rate. It might have been different if we were offering it in Reno or other areas, but
Okay. Yeah, and that,
bear that in mind. They
Yeah,
had their,
and-
Reno and Sparks each had their own programs.
Yeah.
We concentrated on the county.
valid point. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Ms. Henry.
and the Small Business Administration also received funding, so I think a lot of funding is also funneling through those organizations as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Hill, I have you signed in again.
Just to the vice chairman's point, though, if we're doing the outreach and we see the numbers and we're hearing from unincorporated or businesses in unincorporated county that need our support, I'm sure we can peel off a little bit of money.
Right.
Not at the same level that the city of Reno or city of Sparks, we know is going to be doing that assistance because they have so many more. But it's certainly, hopefully we can look at, because that's why we're doing the outreach, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So the whole intent of the outreach and to gather input on the need is because we need to know more about where to target funds and what kind of projects would be most appropriate to meet the need in the community.
All right. All right, seeing no further discussion on this, this is for discussion only, this item is, and so any individuals wishing to speak on this in public comment, we will be moving those individuals to the final public comment pursuant to the rules within the agenda. So with that, we are going to move on to our next item, and this is we're open to our public hearing. And this is our first public hearing of the afternoon or morning. This is item 16. And with that, Madam Clerk, will you please read us into this?
Yes, this is Bill number 1862, an ordinance pursuant to Nevada Revised Statute 278.0201 through 278.0207, adopting a development agreement between Washoe County and NNB1 Partners LLC for Ascenti subdivision, a residential subdivision originally approved in 2017, TM16-009, to retroactively extend the recording of the first final map from August 9th, 2021 to August 9th, 2023. The approved subdivision is a 225-lot, single-family common open space subdivision as authorized in Article 408 of the Washoe County Development Code. The location is south of Fawn Lane and east of Shauna Lane and is comprised of 4 parcels that total approximately 225 acres. The parcels are located within the Forest Area Plan. The property is located within Washoe County Commission District Number 2.
All right, and before we move into this, I have to make a disclosure. In 2017, I'm sorry, I disclosed and abstained from a potential conflict due to interest of a personal relationship with a paid consultant for the Asante project. The law requires that a commissioner disclose any potential conflict of interest and abstain from any participation, advocating, or voting on a matter where it's reasonable where a reasonable person may be affected by the relationship. Although I do not believe there's a current conflict, in an abundance of caution, I'm disclosing the relationship and abstaining from the participation in item 16. And with that, I will turn the gavel and the floor over to the vice chairman, and I will be leaving the room.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. So, Mr. Lloyd, I see you've approached. Do you have a small presentation? And I know that there are some members of the Asante group in the audience, and so proceed. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And if I could ask the presentation, I do have a PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint is up, the clicker's on the right side.
Sorry, I was looking on the left side. Thank you. All right. And again, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. For the record, I'm Trevor Lloyd, Planning Manager with Planning and Development. This is the first reading of an ordinance adopting the development agreement between Washoe County and NNV1 Partners LLC for Sante subdivision to extend the deadline for the recording of the first final map from August 9th to 2021 to August 9th, 2023. The approved subdivision, as read into record, is 225 lot single-family residences. The property is located at the end of Fawn Lane off Mount Rose Highway, just east of Callahan Road. This item was approved on appeal by the county commission on August 8th of 2017. The proposed development agreement will allow the applicant to extend the filing of the recording of the first final map until August 9th, 2023. On June 28th, 2021, the applicant did in fact submit the first five lots final map request. It was, at that time, it was recognized that it was not likely that the final map recording would be completed by the August 9th deadline, and for that reason, the applicant filed a development agreement with the county commission in order to extend that time frame. I would point out that there are several reasons the applicant is making this request. They've indicated that the time extension is necessary to address labor shortages, increased workloads due to business restrictions, as well as COVID-19 related issues. The developers have been working diligently to progress forward. They have submitted, like I indicated, a final map request through Washoe County, and they're asking for this development agreement to extend that time frame so that they can complete a recordation of the first final map. If the board chooses to approve this development agreement request, I offer the following motion for your consideration, and I'm available for any questions that you have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lloyd. I know the applicant is here. Do you wish to speak, Mr. Barnes and Mr. Tanquay? Nope, okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? I don't have any way for anybody to sign in, so you just have to hold up a hand or throw something at me or get my attention. Commissioner Jung, do you have any questions for staff?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So I'm a little vexed. If you'll go back to your slide, they submitted a final map with 5 dwelling units?
5 lots.
5 lots out of 225. And the reason is, and then you've had 4 years, only 1.5 of which is COVID. It's just a question. It's not, I mean, I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
So, and I know we've granted extensions in the past because of a downturn in the economy. I know that. But now there's an upturn in the economy, and we're going to grant an extension because they can't get labor. So why do we even have timelines? Why do we have speed limits? If we're not going to follow them, what's the purpose of this? I'm just trying to understand. Had 4 years to get this done, and we have nothing. So I'm vexed. I'm happy to hear reasons from the applicant. I'm not expecting staff to do this, but you know, I am personally all ears. It makes absolutely no sense to me why we're granting an extension when they've had 4 years to do this. Mr. Barnes, please approach. The floor is yours. Please identify yourself for the record.
Commissioners, my name is Michael Barnes. I'm one of the managing partners with the Sante project. Typically in a development like this, we seek out a home builder. Again, we're master developers. We go through the entitlement process. We create the shape and the format, the design guidelines for the development, and then we go seek a partner to go develop the property. We've had, in the last 4 years, and I will tell you in the last 20 years, in the last 20 years, 10 years of it has been disruptive and I think that's no surprise to everybody. The last 4 years have been equally disruptive. We had issues along the way, kind of pre-COVID. There was a threat that some of the jumbo home loans went out the door. They stopped servicing them. When COVID started, of course, everybody hunkered down and nobody knew what was going to happen to the housing market. When the housing market, we all just more or less froze in place, tried to figure out what we're all going to do. When things did change, we immediately went out to start working on our final map process. The final map process, as you know, we have 225 units, but there is a what they call save the map 5-unit lots that you can submit for. So in November, we went out, we had obtained pricing from all the various consultants. It took a while during COVID to get all those in place. When we finally pulled the trigger after the new year, we had all kinds of problems. Our hydrologist had moved in with her parents in Colorado. Our landscaping engineer consultant, he left and was not even, he's changed companies. We just struggled to try to find engineers to even come up with a design to put together the 5 lots. Our full intention is to develop the property out in conjunction with Toll Brothers. And I believe they sent a letter to all of the commissioners stating that they're going to be our partners and build the project out. They fully intend to come forward with the final maps for all of the development. But again, right now, it was a struggle just to get 5 lots on a mapped process and do all the studies for those 5 lots. And so again, our whole goal is to come through with Toll Brothers and put in a community and Ascente project. We have been held back from, again, COVID has affected all of us in many different ways as far as hiring people. Even staff, I think, has had problems, having meetings with staff, having time to work on projects. They've been restricted as well. So we're just asking for you, please give us an extension of time. We have an end game in plan, and that end game is to build homes with Toll Brothers. We're not going to build the homes, but Toll Brothers is going to build the homes. And then the project will be done with.
Okay. So for Mr. Lloyd, is this the only extension, or was there an administrative extension that was also given?
No, this is the only extension at this time.
There was no administrative
No.
extension? Okay. Okay. And so, Mr. Barnes, so the product that you're talking about, this is not an entry-level product. This is not going to fill a need for, people who are this housing crunch where, people are looking for, what's now an entry-level house, which is, $350,000, $400,000. Am I correct?
That's correct. And for the record, Michael Barnes, you are correct, sir, in that assessment. However, the market is a dynamic market in that anytime you have somebody that moves up from a $500,000 home to a $700,000 home, they now allow room for somebody else to purchase their home. And that in person, so that generally is a person $300,000 or $400,000 home, and they in turn then sell that home to somebody else. So there's a whole dynamics to the market. We are, in fact, Toll Brothers is America's #1 luxury home builder. We're proud of that. We think that's a tremendous home builder to bring to the Reno market in the South Reno. We think that's appropriate for the area. We have Montreux homes in the 2 million plus category. These homes will be, we're projecting someplace in the 700,000 going up to above $1 million. The property is worthy of it. They're very large lots, the smallest lots, and these are maybe in today's standards, maybe not in past days standards, but the smallest lots are 12 to 15,000 square feet. The next size up are 25,000, and then we have 50,000 square foot lots. 43% of the project is in open space. There's trails, connections to the trail system existing, so it's been well thought out. We've minimized all the grading. We've really gone. We're very proud of the design, and we really believe long term that the community is going to be proud of this as well.
Okay. You've mentioned Toll Brothers on a couple of occasions. Why aren't they here today? How come they're not here representing this? Why aren't they in front of us telling us and giving us their word that this is going to happen as well?
And I apologize that they're not here. We asked them to attend, but they did send an email to every one of the commissioners outlining their support for the project. And that came from Kyle Collingsworth, who's the vice president of Toll Brothers here locally.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That doesn't cut it in my book. I apologize. I read the email and I did get it, but I'm still a fence sitter. Questions? Ms. Hill?
I don't have any questions. When checking with staff, I feel like this is an appropriate ask, especially for this time, and I'm willing to make the motion unless there's more discussion on the table.
Okay, before we do that, is there any public comment on this item, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we do have an email submitted by Kyle Collinsworth, for
Okay.
the record.
No one in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Okay, we'll
Nobody
close.
signed in.
Oh, okay, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Ms. Hill, go ahead. Floor is yours.
I don't know what the bill number is, Madam Clerk.
This is
1862.
Bill number 1862, and I just need an introduction, please.
Okay, I move to introduce Bill number 1862 and set the public hearing and second reading of the ordinance for possible adoption during the meeting of September 28, 2021.
Okay. All right, that suffices. Okay, thank you very much. All right, that takes us now, let's take a short break and bring the chairman back in. So we will be in recess until 12 o'clock. I don't have a gavel.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It is noon.
Yes, it is.
As my vice chairman has instructed me, we are back here after a short break. And so I'll call us back into session. We are on to item 17. Mr. Manager.
Item 17 is a public hearing appeal of the denial by the Washoe County Planning Commission of tentative subdivision map case number WTM 21-006, Silver Hills Village 1, which sought approval of a tentative subdivision map to allow a 358 lot, single-family residential common space, open space subdivision with lots ranging in size from 5,000 square feet to 8,072 square feet. The application and property owner is Lifestyle Homes T&D LLC. The proposed project is located on the west side of Red Rock Road, approximately 3/4 of a mile north of its intersection with Silver Knolls Boulevard. The assessor's parcel numbers are APN 087-390-10 and 087-390-13. The subject site is approximately 308.6 acres in size. The master plan designation of the subject site is suburban residential. The regulatory zone of the subject site is Silver Hills specific plan. The subject site is located within the North Valleys area plan. There you are, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I do appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an appeal today from the Planning Commission. And usually as we have allowed for business, we will have a brief presentation from staff for the commission, and then allow the appellant an opportunity to speak and present their case in regards to the appeal. And so with that, Mr. Pellin, I believe you're here to present to us in regards for the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can get the staff presentation rather than the applicant presentation up there, I would appreciate it.
Swap those out really quick for you.
Yeah.
Well, while we're waiting, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. For the
Good
record, my name
afternoon.
is Roger Pelham, and I am a senior planner with Washoe County Planning and Building.
We're happy to have you here, Mr. Pelham. We'll see where we're going here. Sorry, we threw a little curveball at our IT. We look. Okay, just give us a second. Beautiful.
Okay, I'm very sorry. That is the Planning
Planning
Commission presentation. The
All right.
presentation prepared for today was emailed on Friday.
Give us 1 second. Do we want to do this in reverse? You want to try that?
Why not?
All right, let's.
The pleasure of the board, of course.
Hold on, let's see here. How easy is it to put the appellant's presentation back up while we look for Mr. Pelham's presentation? There you go. There you go. So let's do this in reverse today, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to let the appellant go first this morning and present their case to as why we are here for the appeal and give us their rendition. So, Mr. Gordon, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, Mr. Manager. For the record, today Garrett Gordon with Lewis and Roca on behalf of Lifestyle Homes. I have with me today Bob and Peter Listner, as well as Mike Rayleigh, who are available for any questions. So a little background. This is an appeal, of course, of a Planning Commission denial. The application is for 358 single-family homes. This conforms to the approved specific plan. Over 2 years ago, we brought this project forward and received approval for over 1,800 units. This is step number 1. This is village number 1. We have a lot more villages to go, a lot more beautiful amenities, parks, trails to go. This is the first step in a long process. What we're fortunate to do to bring for this tentative map is the backbone trail network. That was required in the handbook, and you'll see some great slides showing the network. Also a dedicated trailhead. That was also a requirement for the first tentative map, is to complete that trailhead. And that was some input from the community, making sure that trailhead was built day number 1. So to remind everyone of the project location, Silver Hills specific plan was approved kind of in 2 different parts, with Red Road bisecting both parts. We have Silver Hills East of Red Rock Road, and to the west, we have Silver Hills West. You can see in the top right-hand corner in blue there is this first village, village number 1, 358 units. As I mentioned before, it's been a long time coming to get to this point. Over 2 years in Lifestyle's efforts to bring additional attainable housing to this community. This Silver Hills specific plan was heard in 2019 by the Planning Commission, approved by this body in October of 2019. We went to Regional Planning Commission twice. Ultimately, the Regional Governing Board approved this project, and a petition for judicial review was filed by the Silver Knolls organization. That's kind of been hanging over this project as well as the DA's office. A lot of resources used by the DA's office and us to fight that lawsuit, and I'm happy to report, as of a few months ago, Judge Draculich dismissed all counts. There's no longer any litigation related to this project, and we're moving forward to bring, again, a great attainable housing project to the county. The land use plan, to remind you, again, you have Silver Hills East, Silver Hills West. Up in the right-hand corner there of Silver Hills West is village number 1 that we're here today. You can see there'll be an extensive trail network, considerable open space, and eventually a location for a school, which was important when this plan came forward. So this specific map is, again, 358 units, and we started with just that. 358 units because the overall density in Silver Hills West had to equal 3 units per acre, but not each map, in our opinion. But we got some feedback from staff, and staff said, you know what, we'd like you to balance this map. Every map you move forward, we want it to equal 3 units per acre. So this map, if you just looked at the unit count, we're at about 6 units per acre. But it was important to staff. I want to just show a pattern here. As we've worked with your staff for the last few months, we've continued to pivot and respond to them to make sure we were addressing all of their issues. So you can see in this map, not only is it the 358 units, but it includes along the left side of the property and all the way down to the southern end, the open space as well. Common area, open space, dedicated in perpetuity that will be used by the residents of this subdivision as well as residents of the area. Site plan and traffic calming. Here's the site plan again, Pocket Park, Trailhead, road network. We got some feedback just to make sure that there were traffic calming measures in this site plan. If you look up the condition of approval, UU, it does say traffic calming measures over project roadways within the project boundary shall be constructed every 500 to 600 feet to the satisfaction of the county engineer. Acceptable traffic calming measures include speed cushions, bulb outlets, neck downs, and other examples. This is a really good point in that this is a tentative map and we have 14 pages of conditions of approval. That the map, a tentative map, basically puts out the layout, puts out the amenities, but it doesn't get into all the design guidelines and the weeds. That's what happens when you come with the final map. Again, 14 pages of conditions of approval. This being one, to make sure we not only meet the North Valley's area plan, the county master plan, and this specific plan as we move forward with the final map. So as I mentioned, the trailhead, dedicated public trailhead with equestrian access and parking. That equestrian access was important when we went through the community visioning workshops with this character management area plan, including the ability to park horse trailers. Community pocket park, dedicated backbone trail network, providing legal public access to BLM lands. That's also feedback we got with the visioning workshops 2 years ago, is making sure there's that connection to BLM lands off Red Rock Road. Internal green belts provide community walking paths, links to future agri-hood, future public facilities, community amenities. Again, this is the first step. As we move forward, you're going to see the benefit of the agri-hood, the public facilities, the community amenities as this eventually gets built out. All amenities will be open to the public and maintained by the HOA, taking the burden off the county for the maintenance costs. As promised and as delivered in the handbook, trailhead, first one, first map, first trailhead. You can see here split rail fencing, also hitching post, parking for not only vehicles, but trailers as well, and a really nice amenity for not only this development, for the public to access those public lands. And the backbone trail plan, this is important when this plan came through this body a few years ago. You can see there's two different colored dotted lines, right? The black dotted lines are future trails. The white is what we're responsible for doing today. So the white dotted line, that trail network, will in fact be built out with Village 1, along with, you can see the green area on the left-hand side of the screen. All that common open space will also be dedicated. And as mentioned before, on the top of the property, not only will the trail system be built out, the trailhead will be built out and maintaining access to those BLM lands. That was a big part of our pitch a couple years ago, and it's nice to accomplish these amenities in the first map. Our handbook also gave a kind of variety of options for entries and wayfinding. These are the one we chose. We think it'll be a very beautiful, aesthetically pleasing project. Community fencing, again, we're complying with the handbook with split rail throughout the open space areas. Washoe County Regional Parks and Open Space. So we worked very hard with them 2 years ago with the specific plan. Number one, making sure the public trailhead and backbone trails were completed with Village 1. So that's a requirement, absolutely doing it. Providing legal pedestrian and equestrian access to public lands, enhancing that pedestrian access to the Silver Nose Park on south of the project. Planned Village 1 Pocket Park will be open to the general public. And now the last bullet point is where we go next. So there's a lot of next in this project. It's very dynamic, very innovative. The next step will require that the 500th unit to have a park with a minimum of 10 acres. So we're already starting to work closely with the park staff to complete a survey for what improvements are needed at this Silver Nose Park to make sure if we build it, they will come. We're using our money toward amenities that will be used by kids and families throughout the area. So that's kind of another preview of what comes next. Of course, the village-specific impact analysis was completed, traffic study completed. The traffic improvement for these 358 homes is a left-hand turn lane coming off Red Rock Road to Silver Hills Parkway. If you recall also 2 years ago when we approved this specific plan, I think it was Commissioner Hartung who mentioned wanting kind of a cap on the number of homes that would be constructed per year until the infrastructure on 395 commenced and started moving forward. So that's still part of this handbook, and this specific village still has that cap of 150 homes until that 395 is commenced. There will be future improvements as these future maps come forward. This second to last bullet point is also important and pretty unique for the North Valleys area plan. RTC standard, as many of you know, is level of service D. In Reno and Sparks, and a lot of times in Washoe County, as long as you're meeting level of service D, it's an acceptable level of service. North Valleys area plan has a more stringent one embedded in it. It's level of service C. So not only does this village, this map, the final maps have to meet level of service C, but all future villages as well. And this, of course, does with the left-hand turn lane. And finally, this project, this first one will contribute approximately $1.8 million to traffic impact fees that eventually helps with Red Rock and other improvements in the area. School district, I was worth mentioning, specific plan reserves property for a new elementary school, not needed with Village 1, but will be there for future villages. Lifestyle homes, as you all know, and this community knows, a proven history of working with Washoe County School District, and they will continue to do so. Stormwater, this was also important. The specific plan handbook, the county rate was 1-to-1 as far as retention rates for stormwater. And I believe, again, Commissioner Hartung mentioned at the hearing 2 years ago, he wanted a more stringent standard. So we're now at 1 to 1.5, which is the most stringent stormwater retention rate in the region. It ensures that flows to Silver Lake are reduced. And let me say that again, reduced. A lot of times 1-to-1 would be that pre-development flows have to equal or be less than post-development flows. Here, our post-development flows will be less than pre-development flows. So we promise to make the situation better, and we are making the situation better. Common areas will include infrastructure to accept effluent reuse. Project considerations, again, level of service C, primary access via the first leg of the Silver Hills Parkway Loop, only direct neighborhood access to the secondary emergency access point. We did hold a community meeting in June of 2021. As far as kind of Silver Knolls meetings, it was pretty tame. We got input on traffic, which we talked about, level of service C, and maintaining that access to public lands, which we're doing. And we did make provisions for ATV access at the request of the public. Another condition of approval that was put on this project at the specific plan level was making sure there was a fire assessment fee and a sheriff assessment fee. $300 per unit to fire and $300 per sheriff. So those will start being paid now as we move forward with final maps and building permits. So quickly to the appeal. Planning Commission could not make two findings: plan consistency and design or improvement. Plan consistency. We fully believe this map complies with the master plan, the North Valleys area plan, and our specific plan. That Village 1 design and density are fully compliant with all area plan policies. The staff report lists many of them. I've identified some here, and it complies with all of them. The one, I think, issue that was raised by the Planning Commission and raised by staff during the Planning Commission hearing was a concern about encouraging a wide range of housing types. We absolutely agree that the handbook says and encourages, you can see here, encourages a wide range of single-family home types. That's why we put in the specific plan 3 options for home types. You have your larger lot, low-density neighborhoods, 15,000 square feet to 1 acre. You have a mid-range product, and then you have a more dense product. As we move forward to a town center and move forward to the agri-hood, we'll get to that more dense product. But this is the first step. Family neighborhood to construct this Village 1. There's no requirement to put all 3 of these bullets in the one village. It's encouraging to use all 3 eventually, and the first one we selected was number 2, mid-range. And what does that encourage? You can see up top, pedestrian connection, trails or sidewalks shall be provided in order to provide community connectivity. We chose this first product for our first village. We're compliant with the pedestrian connections, the trails, the community connectivity. That's the product you see today. And there's pictures too. I showed this to the Planning Commission. There was discussion of what this should look like. there's pictures in the handbook that shows what it should look like. And it's a uniform product in each village. As you move toward the core, you get the amenities, the agri-hood, and some higher density. So it 100% complies with the plan. The other one was design or improvement. We got into some weeds a little bit about does this comply with the specific plan and design elements. In my experience and Lifestyle's experience, those design elements are worked out by conditions of approval with a final map. We're not today designing what every house is going to look like, what the elevation is, what the roof line is. We're doing a tentative map. We're doing where the lots are going to be laid out, where's the street network, where are the trails, where are the amenities, and complying with the handbook for final map. The issue that was raised at Planning Commission was there's a requirement in the handbook that says you got to have varied setbacks. You can't look down the street and have a uniform front setback. It has to be staggered to make it interesting. So we at first said to staff, well, that's a handbook requirement. We absolutely will comply with it at final map when we design each house. We got some pushback, so we believe we found the middle ground. Again, trying to always compromise with staff and find the win-win. And here, there's 2 conditions of approval that require 15 and 70-foot setbacks. Those are minimums. We can go more, but we can't go less to make sure it's going to be staggered at time of final map. So with that all said, we did, and I give credit to the listeners, they said, well, what can we learn from the Planning Commission? What can we learn from feedback we've gotten? How can we go to the board and make this project even better? So we came up with this condition that we offer to put, if you approve this today, on to us to move forward. Let me read it for the record. So long as the final maps for this tentative map still substantially comply with the tentative map as required by NRS 278-378, that's in there to make sure if we do make changes to the tentative map before final map, we don't have to come back to this body or the Planning Commission. Number 1, we shall include industry standard wiring to be solar ready for electric vehicle hookup and battery ready for each home. Pretty neat, pretty sustainable, I think a pretty great addition to this project. And 2, endeavor in our discretion to include on the final maps any kind of additional innovative amenities that we can. We've already designed this. We've been through Planning Commission. We want to get this attainable housing on the market and and out to the public. But we can always probably do a little better and try to add some more amenities. So we're going to endeavor, and Lifestyle, they're in this community, they're local. They're going to make good faith efforts to see if they can add some additional trails or parks or landscaping, agri-hood facilities, community gardens, roadway design, take input from you and the commission, and try to add some more elements before final map. The last paragraph basically says we're going to do our best, but kind of staff can't hold us up if for some reason we don't hit every one of these, but do our best to find a few. So a summary is we believe adamantly the record reflects we meet all legal findings for this map. It fully complies with the plan, the handbook, 14 pages of conditions of approval, and everything in the North Valley's plan, including level service C. The site's well suited for development, and Lifestyle, is looking forward to developing another quality product that helps to solve the current housing shortage. And with that, our team is for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. I do appreciate it. Thank you for the presentation, and we will bring you back up for some questions in just a moment. Mr. Pelham, I see if we have your presentation ready now. Looks like we do. All right. There we go. That looks like the right one, right, Mr. Pelham? Perfect. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, again, Roger Pelham, Senior Planner with Planning and Building. The consideration today is the appeal of the denial by the Planning Commission of tentative map WTM 21-006 Silver Hills. This is a request for a 350-lot, single-family open space, common open space subdivision with lots in the 5,000 to 8,000 square foot range. It is located on Red Rock Road. I'll try not to be awfully redundant here, as shown on the vicinity map. And then within that site, here is where Village 1 is proposed to be located. This is a graphic layout of that, which shows consistent lots, more or less the same size, straight streets throughout and the beginnings of what may become Silver Hills Parkway there to the southern portion of this developed area. This is located within the Silver Hills Specific Plan area and is required to comply with those Development Standards Handbook and the North Valleys Area Plan. That Development Standards Handbook actually has been included as part of the Washoe County Master Plan. One of the requirements is for the provision of a variety of housing options. This map has one type of housing. It does meet the overall density of 3 dwelling units per acre. The handbook requires that the architecture be approved by the Design Review Committee. Again, taking that out of the purview of staff, that's really not something that staff is prepared to evaluate. There is a limitation of 150 lots per year until certain improvements to I-580 are done. And again, the front yard setbacks are required to be varied. I believe that one of the things that sort of gave the Planning Commission pause was that these wouldn't so much be varied as they would simply alternate between 1517 down the road, and that all of the garages would be located at 20 feet. Trails are required to be constructed as part of the first phase of development, and this does comply with some, but not all, of the area plan policies. This was noticed in accordance with the requirements of the Development Code and Nevada Revised Statutes. Various agencies reviewed these, and their comments are included with the Planning Commission staff report. All of those are included at Exhibit A. County engineering staff are here to address questions on things like the traffic and traffic calming measures that may be required. The tentative map findings, which are found on 16 through 17 of the Planning Commission staff report, is this consistent with the plan? Generally speaking, yes, but not entirely. The proposed map does not provide a variety of housing options. There is also another lesser, perhaps, requirement for minimizing curb, gutter, and sidewalk. No, nothing really was done to do that. And there is a requirement that passive solar be taken into consideration, given the fact that this is essentially a very traditional lot and block subdivision. It is questionable whether that policy has been met. So, the Planning Commission found that the design or improvement was not consistent with all of the requirements of the Silver Hills specific plan. The type of, and again, these are the required findings that the Planning Commission considered. Type of development, yes, this is physically suitable. There are no constraints. Those areas that are above 30% slope are proposed to be within the open space. Facilities will be provided. That is basic code requirement before we would allow building permits to be issued. Again, fish and wildlife, there's nothing particularly unusual there. Public health, these will all be on community water and community sewer. So there are no particular issues that come up there. Easements will be required, again, in conformance with minimum code standards. Likewise, access. Paved roads are proposed in accordance with minimum standards, and any dedication will be consistent with the master plan. Those dedications really are going to be things like the parks. And here we get to the findings about energy, and no particular emphasis in the design was placed upon minimizing the use of energy. Perhaps the biggest criticism that the Planning Commission had was that this is only one small piece of a possible overall development. This map does not in and of itself comply with all of the components of the specific plan, in that there are required to be different types of housing. In this case, only one is proposed. Others may be proposed in the future in subsequent villages or phases. Then again, they may not. Nothing is evidenced is in evidence with this application, that in fact other things will be done in the future. The criticism was that this was only one piece of the puzzle, and that sort of they were inhibited in making a decision by the fact that they didn't have the entire project to look at. The applicant has appealed that decision. Staff is bringing forward the decision made by the Planning Commission to this commission for review. They were unable, again, Planning Commission was unable to make findings number 1 and 2, as shown on page 2 of the staff report to this board. Should this board agree with the decision made by the Planning Commission, we have a possible motion here. Should this commission disagree with the decision made by the Planning Commission, we have another possible motion. These are included in your staff report. And with that, I've tried to be as brief as I could, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Pelham. I do appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over to my commissioners first for any questions. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, public comment. Thank you. I apologize. This is a public hearing. No, this is a public hearing, sir. You're right. Actually, I'm going to take public comment right now. And so, Madam Clerk, will you please call public comment?
I have Cindy Martinez signed in.
All right. Welcome, Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, sir. I guess hello to the commissioners, Madam District Attorney, Madam Clerk, Mr. Manager. I appreciate that the listener family has been rather engaged in providing what is perceived to be affordable housing for this community. They did build affordable housing at the top of Sun Valley probably over 20 years ago. That property, that community is accessible by Sun Valley Boulevard and Highland Ranch Parkway, so there's only 2 points of ingress and egress out of that community. Cold Springs is similarly quite populated with their home product. And similarly, if you look at the map, there isn't very much way to get out of Cold Springs. There's only a couple of points of ingress and egress by White Lake Parkway and Cold Springs, the southern entry. If you remember, in the last 10 years, there was a significant fire at the back end of that encroached upon the back of lifestyle homes, and there was a concern about the ability of the population, the citizenry, to evacuate. I myself live in DeAndrea, and they're building back up into the back of what I think is called Copper Canyon. Off of DeAndrea, we only have 2 points of ingress and egress. Silver Knolls, the North Valleys are last of the few open spaces that we have in Washoe County. This product that they're proposing, as I look at this, will completely destroy the rural nature of the North Valleys, especially on Silver Knolls. So if you talk about Silver Knolls and the rural characterization of that community, you will have to widen Red Rock Road to 4 lanes, much like they had to do Pyramid Highway when I first moved to town, I think in 1994, when they had to widen that. And you've seen what's happened to the Spanish Springs Valley. It's absolutely paved over. It's a stucco jungle. I live in a stucco jungle. So I would suggest that this is a product that is not compatible with the rural nature of North Valleys. And as I look at the Nevada SOS Secretary of State website and I review campaign contributions, the Listener family, Lifestyle Homes under different iterations, Robert Listener, Lifestyle Homes, Elaine Listener, Peter Cassidy have collectively bestowed a couple $100,000 in buying the influence of the Washoe County Commission and the city councils. So I would say that we have concerns, legitimate concerns about ingress and egress if we have fire. We know we're looking over at the west side of the state line and ask that you consider that you do not allow this community to be built.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
I have nobody else signed in.
No further public comment. All right, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. And so I will open it for commissioners' comments and questions. Commissioner Herman, I have you signed in first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have something that I think we all in this room should know. recently, a developer in the North Valleys sued a private citizen for speaking against their project. To cause a lot of grief for that person. And I have had a lot of people contact me in the last couple of days and say they wanted to come to this meeting and speak in public comment, but they're afraid that they may be sued as well. I know you probably wouldn't, but they're afraid of that. And so I don't think you're getting the fairest, meeting here. It's not one public comment is kind of not representative of all the people up there. And then the second issue has been my stick in the mud thing about the sewer. And there hasn't been much change. So I probably can't vote for the project. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to approach from a different direction. I'm going to go from it's not if. I mean, this is an approved use of this property. The two issues that the Planning Commission had were, if I marked them down correctly, plan consistency and design or improvement, correct? Conditions 1 and 2, or not conditions, findings 1 and 2 rather. So I'm going to approach from a completely different direction. So my issue is, and we're dealing with this in numerous places. In fact, we talked about this earlier today. These are long, straight streets. There's no traffic calming. This is not a in my opinion a subdivision that was designed to control speeds and control traffic. I personally have no issue with the fact that there's not multiple types of product in this. I know how these things work. You don't have horse properties downtown for a reason, and but we do see out in Spanish Springs. I mean, I live on a fairly large parcel, 1 1/3 acres. It's not a huge parcel, but it's more than I can handle. And within a mile or two, in fact, less than a mile, we've got smaller lots. So I understand that, but what I don't see in this is I don't see a design where we have calmed traffic. I see all straight streets, long sweepers. There's a scenario here where we as the county will end up coming back at some point in the future and fixing this stuff. It's what we're dealing with in Spanish Springs. It's what we're dealing with in the South Valleys. We're dealing with it in the North Valleys. In my opinion, this is an old style design for a subdivision. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when we talked about this, we talked about an agri-hood. Now, my vision, and perhaps I didn't articulate it well enough, my vision for an agri-hood was more agricultural components in every single neighborhood, not just one large agricultural component, somewhere. If you look at true agri-hoods across the nation, there's agricultural components throughout all of the neighborhoods, and I don't see that. I don't see that design here. And so my question is, and also what I would like to see in the future, I'm going to use kind of a weird term. I'm not sure whether I've coined it or not, but I'm going to call it the Mr. Potato Head form of planning, where instead of giving us one map, and in fact, pull up the map if we could, staff. It's It's on the applicant's page, I think it's, and I don't see, sadly, I don't see a,
Edit.
nope, forward, that,
What do you want
that
now?
one, right there, that's the map. Okay, so I see one pocket park, and I see one thing, sort of down the middle, and then I see long, straight streets. So either Mr. Solero or Mr. Smith, can you come down and answer some questions for me in terms of tentative map versus final map? And what I mean by the Mr. Potato Head form of giving us a tentative map, maybe what we need to do, commissioners, is have multiple maps where you can say, well, this is potentially one design, this is potentially another design, or we can use components of any one of these designs and come up with that final map. So, Mr. Smith, I know, because we've already had this conversation, condition UU is traffic calming measures over the project roadways within the project boundaries shall be constructed every 500 to 600 feet to the satisfaction of the county engineer. You.
Good morning. For the record, Dwayne Smith, Director of Engineering Capital Projects and your county engineer. Happy to answer any questions for you and maybe help a little bit through this part of the process. Yes, you have in front of you this request to make a determination regarding this tentative map, and I appreciate the comments and the questions that have come regarding specifically traffic safety and pedestrian safety. Those are important issues, and that is the sole reason for those comments and for the condition UU. The challenge that we do face is between the tentative map process and when the final map is submitted, there can be deviations. I'll leave it up to the planning department and to the others to talk about how significant those deviations are in other areas, but I will tell you, when it comes to engineering, things like infrastructure, we spend time working with the applicants, with their representatives, their engineers, their traffic engineers, so that we can address these potential challenges. Because to your point, Mr. Vice Chair, is we don't want to have to deal with these things later or minimize those impacts. So there is a rigorous process that will occur between the approval of the tentative map and ultimately when that final map is submitted for approval. These types of things will have to be met or that final map won't be approved. I think the challenge that we have right now is, what do those look like? How does that work to the greatest degree possible? And I appreciate your comment about the alternative kind of process. I think you referred to it as Mr. Potato Head. I think what you're really saying there is that how do we bring this information to you for your consideration when it lands on your dais, or to the Planning Commission as well? And I think there are probably some ways that we can help enhance that, and also recognize that there may be changes, and likely will be, before we get to the actual approval of a final map.
Or to the open public, so that they can see sort of some of these, general design concepts and not one design and, take it or leave it, it's flapjacks or it's not. And so this is a very frustrating thing for me, because I'm going to be a little mean. I don't see this as innovative at all. I don't see it as an innovative design. I'm not telling you that I'm not supportive of what you guys want to do. I'm telling you that this is not an innovative design. So I would like to see those kinds of changes. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate it. So then I heard staff talk about parks dedication. And this may be a question for the applicant. Are the parks that are proposed, which by the way are not enough in this? I know we've talked about, and so that pocket park, how big is that pocket park? Just as an example. What's the size, Mr. Raley?
For the record, Mike Raley with Christie Corporation. I believe that pocket park is right around 30,000 square feet.
30,000 square feet. That's that one pocket park. And those little park things on the end?
Without telling, just an estimate, I would say that the end caps that you see there are probably in the range of 4,000 to 5,000 square feet.
So I'm just looking at this, and I'm sorry. So if those lots are 8,000 square feet, so it's the total pocket park.
Those are 5,000 square. The lots, to give you a reference,
5,000
the lots
square foot
are
lots.
5,000 square foot lots.
So I see those as maybe 10,000 square foot parks.
So total, I think we're right around 30,000 square feet. So if you look, you've got about a little over 25,000 in the pocket park itself, and then it extends up as basically like a linear park up to the north to the trail.
I would submit to you, you can't even have a football game in that park. I'm sorry, and I have a large backyard. I moved into a neighborhood that had no parks. The only park in my neighborhood was the desert to the east before Spanish Springs Elementary School existed. We've talked about this before. I'm not trying to beat on you guys. And then we had one ball field off on the corner of what was then the old Spanish Springs Road and Pyramid Highway. Now that's a car wash and et cetera. That's long since gone away for other reasons, but I digress. My point is that with all due respect to you guys, this is not what you told me. So what are you going to change in this? What are you going to do to make this a better neighborhood?
So appreciate the comments, Commissioner Harthon. Let me just also add that, right, this community has already been designed in the handbook. So the park you're talking about for the football game is the 10-acre park that comes at the 500th lot, right? So we put the pieces together to the ultimate puzzle for this entire 1,872 unit development. It all comes together and there's triggers and benchmarks as we move forward, including a variety of housing, number of pocket parks, number of trails, open space, amenities. So I would say to you that this village complies with the handbook as far as what pocket parks are supposed to be added, and as far as the requirements, the trailhead came with this village, as what did that white dotted line for a trail system, not just applicable to this village, but a trail system that now connects BLM to Red Rock, Silver Knolls Park, up to the top of this project. The trail system you get with this village. So the next village, you get 10-acre park. The next village, you get agrihood. The next village, you get townhomes. Like, as we put the pieces together and start massing people, the amenities will come. But to your point, in trying to not just meet the handbook, which I clearly believe this does, is where we came up with this additional condition to do what you're saying. And we're happy to work with you, any other commissioners, staff, to give any additional input. And this is why we added that we'd like to include in our final map, as Mr. Johnson said, there's a process from what you're seeing here to what the final map looks like. The streets could be curved, there would be traffic calming. We're gonna look at some additional trails, maybe some additional parks. Is there an agri-hood facility we can put here now? It's not required, but we're willing to do that, and we're willing to look at community gardens and roadway. So we meet code, but can we get more creative with your input? Yes, and this condition will push us in that direction. And I certainly know if I'm standing up here in a year from now for Village 2, and it doesn't have more different types of housing that we've been promising, then we're gonna have issues. But this step one, this first piece of the puzzle, I think meets code, and this condition gives you that comfort that we're gonna do our best and Lifestyle will to add some more in there that you can be proud of.
Okay, so you're telling me that this meets code, this is the minimum standard?
I submit to you,
it meets code.
It meets the specific plan handbook that we negotiated.
Which is the minimum standard.
It meets code, correct. It meets the specific plan.
So what you're saying is what my children always used to tell me is Ds get degrees.
Well, I would disagree with that because, one, we've exceeded code in that we not only just dedicated 358 units, created 358 units in the map, but we added all the open space as well. This was not required to do. I am adamant from a legal perspective. We did not have to take all of that green area on the western boundary and overnight, now that's dedicated open space in perpetuity. The Silver Knolls residents, the Spanish Springs residents are gonna be able to use that and this trail network. So I think we have gone above and beyond as far as open space. We have the trails that are required. And look, the minimum is here, this white dotted line. So it's not just our little world up in the northeast corner of our village and the rest of the balance of the property we'll get to later. This is why this body conditioned in here that each village has to take a step in improving the entire property, which now you can see the folks who came and testified, who live next to Silver Knolls Park 3 years ago, said, we want connectivity, not only from a trail perspective, but they also said, we want connectivity to the Tumwa line. So if you recall, in the future phase, we're connecting the Tumwa line down to them to give them a better water source. So
I know, and that's something I conditioned.
you absolutely did. So I'm saying each piece of the puzzle comes together, and we're now going to have a trail network, open space. Look, even the school's going to be online at some point in time. So I think we not only meet but exceed the handbook that was approved, very rigorous. And that handbook, mind you, you have code, Washoe County code, then you have our handbook. Our handbook is more stringent than Washoe County code. So by meeting our handbook, we're not doing the bare minimum. We're doing what this body asked us to do when it approved this 2 years ago.
Okay. I will respectfully disagree, because I think that I would like to see between now and the final map, I would like to see more agricultural components. I envisioned things like areas where even the residents could do their own farming. I mean, if you watch the piece this morning, Ersten Witten has this wonderful little area where he's growing food, and it's feeding some of the needy. I'm not suggesting that happens here. I am suggesting that an amenity in this neighborhood, in all the neighborhoods, needs to be some agricultural components that are interspersed throughout these neighborhoods, not just one big agricultural component, because we know that this is 66 acres, right? Is that what it is? 60, or is it 67 acres?
This specific village?
This specific, yeah, this village.
60, I don't want to misquote it. It's, 66, correct.
66 acres, okay? So, I mean, 66 acres is it's a pretty good size chunk of property to have 350 houses on it, which there's a lot of houses in that. So my point with this is, look, I'm supportive of entry-level housing. I get it. I myself moved into an entry-level house, which was way out in the middle of nowhere. It's not in the middle of nowhere anymore. It's town center now, but that's only because I've lived there for 34 years in the same house. Point being is, I get that part of it. I'm not in a twist over the housing product, and I'm not in a twist what they look like. That's not what we're here for, in my opinion. I'm in a twist over the design of the neighborhoods and what will it cost future generations of taxpayers, and what will it cost in terms of time, future generations of staff and commissioners and elected officials to go back and retrofit this stuff. That's the part that I'm in a twist over. So I'm very interested in becoming more involved. This is Commissioner Herman's district. I'm not trying to insert myself in this, but the concept of agrihood, and Mr. Listeners, both of you guys know that the concept of agrihood was mine. I brought it to you, and it wasn't something that I sat up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, oh my God, I got this great idea. They're all over the nation. They're in, the East, they're in the Midwest, they're in, the Northwest, they're all over the nation. There are numerous places where these agrihoods exist, and the people that live in them, one of the comments that they make is, it's wonderful to live in a neighborhood with agricultural components. In a neighborhood with agricultural components. And I don't see that here. So I'll stand down. I'll stop beating on you. You understand my concern with this. I have concerns with traffic on Red Rock. I'd like to know what the triggers are going to be that will see that improved. I know that eventually, and I don't know how this all ties back into some of the issues that are going to go on the airport authority's property, because that's something that we have no control over. That's an issue for the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. There could potentially be other connections that go across the top of the airport, and I know that those are, dotted lines on a map right now, but those could ultimately be the case. One last thing. I'm not concerned. We have 8,000 acre feet of water coming through the Vidler pipeline. That's ultimately probably going to be the source of the water that you guys get from Tumwa. There's the potential to get up to 13,000 acre feet through that pipeline. So I'm not so wrapped on that. And I'm not wrapped around the issue in terms of wastewater, because I know we've had this conversation. I know you guys would like to somehow purchase your effluent back, which I would highly recommend. We see that in these plans of how you plan on using that effluent to enhance this community. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I just
Sorry for being so
respond
long.
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
briefly?
Ford.
Thank
Yes.
you, Commissioner. So I think there's a very good example here of, I know when we brought the Silver Hills specific plan, you were twisted on the infrastructure, how it was going to work, where it was going to work, what was going to happen. And we put on a condition of approval to do a facilities plan. So that's why we're not talking about facilities right now, because that system worked. We did the facilities plan, it was studied, it was bundled with this application. It looks good. We have to do a second facilities plan as we move forward with future villages. Great condition. I think hopefully got you a little untwisted on the facilities. I'm hopefully asking, as far as getting you untwisted on the additional agri-hood and community gardens, is this condition. We added a condition on last time. Let's add this one that allows us to work with Dwayne, to work with you, to work with staff, and to come up with some additional trails or parks or community gardens or roadway design, a curve here or something there, which is it's not anything special in that this happens all the time between tentative map and final map, but we're trying to put something in writing to show how serious we are of hearing your concerns and incorporating those into the design of a final map that you and this commission can be proud of.
Commissioner Hill, I have you signed in next.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yeah.
just make a comment?
Sure.
Before
Commissioner Hill, before
Commissioner
you.
Hill. So,
Yes.
and I would be happy to work with staff and work with the applicant, but I would certainly not want to overstep any boundary in terms of, this is Commissioner Herman's district. And so I mean, I have no issue. I love this kind of stuff. I feed on it, but, I mean, that it would be a decision that you guys, if you guys want to give me some direction and tell me, yeah, go forth, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that we need to meet this development needs to meet all the findings, so we can, if we want to move forward with approval or to accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission. And I'm really confused as to why this was brought to us from the Planning Commission, because I don't know how it doesn't meet the plan consistency or the design or improvement findings. So I don't know if staff, I know you briefly went over those. If you don't mind coming back up here and just going over, you were saying, and I wrote this down, the plan meets the plan consistency, but not all the area plan requirements. And could you go over what those are again?
Yes, thank you very much again. For the record, Roger Pillen with Washoe County Planning. The Silver Hills specific plan requires there are essentially three things. There are area plan policies or specific plan policies that the Planning Commission found were not appropriately addressed by this application. The first of those was that multiple housing types are required. Because this is only one small piece of an overall potential development, the Planning Commission felt that it could not say that there were in fact multiple housing types because only one housing type is proposed with this development. Others may or may not be done in the future, be proposed in the future, but we have nothing in front of us today that says that they in fact will be. Okay, that's primarily the largest one. There's also a North Valley's area plan policy that says we want to minimize the use of curb, gutter, and sidewalk within new subdivisions.
What does that mean? I'm sorry, minimize
Okay.
the use of those.
Thank you very much. What that means is because much of the North Valley's area plan is more rural than suburban or urban, the preference when that plan was written was for things like curb, gutter, and sidewalk not to be utilized within new subdivisions, but rather roads without curb, V-ditches on the side, those things that provide a more rural feeling to a community. That is something that is in the North Valleys Area Plan that is not addressed at all in this one. This one is in a very, very traditional lot and block subdivision. That is to say, linear streets, linear cross streets. It's a very, very typical grid pattern with cookie cutter houses going straight down very long, straight streets. So the Planning Commission felt that no, they didn't, the application materials presented did not meet that required area plan policy. And then finally, there is a finding that passive solar be included to the extent possible. Again, energy efficiency going forward is a very important thing. I think we can all recognize that. This, again, being a very traditional, very linear lot and block subdivision, I believe the Planning Commission felt that they were not convinced that those area plan policies were appropriately addressed.
Okay, and then the second finding, the design or improvement. So my understanding is that it's just, and when I read the minutes from the Planning Commission, it was just a concern that 2 feet between 15 and 17 feet was not enough of variety when you had a 24-foot setback to the garage.
That is a portion of it, yes.
Okay.
That instead of being a range of variable setbacks, it was simply an alternating 2 foot between each adjacent dwelling. That was part of it. The other part of the design that was called out by the Planning Commission, and if I can ask our AV staff to pull up the applicant's proposal, please, their PowerPoint rather. The Planning Commission looked at a page that was shown by the applicant here from their specific plan, which showed what this type of neighborhood may look like. And this, as you see, page 2-10 here from that area plan, if you look at the upper left of these 6 illustrations, this is a possible illustration of this type of neighborhood. And what the Planning Commission noted was that most of these are not long, straight, linear transportation facilities, but rather these were shorter. There's some cul-de-sacs, there's some bins. Those design elements that are shown here are not shown in the application materials as provided.
Okay. For me, I don't agree. I see, so for plan consistency, going back to those concerns, this whole development will have multiple housing types. So I don't know if on just one portion of the village we can really judge that. The applicant has also offered an additional condition on solar-ready, so to address this passive solar requirement today, and that's on the table, so I don't think that that's an issue. And then reduction of curb and gutter, I think if we're gonna have schools nearby, we may need to look at, I'm just confused by that area plan requirement because we want kids to stay on the sidewalk, so if at all possible. On the long streets, I live on a grid and it's really easy to find where my house is, so I don't have a problem with that either. So that's where I stand, Mr. Chairman, and I think that it's great that the Vice Chairman is willing to work with the developer between now and final map.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Vice Chair Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I again will slightly disagree with, with the Planning Commission. I live in a community with V-ditches. They're a hassle. They grow constantly. I am constantly dealing with just with, it's not so much that, because I kind of live in an interesting place. I live up on a hill, so mine doesn't get washed out so much, but there are no places for people to walk in my neighborhood. You have to walk in the street, or you have to walk in these V ditches. And so that's a problem. And so I see us moving forward requiring curb and gutter. It's just a more sanitary way. And we've had in the lower lying areas of our subdivision, we've had lots of silt that has had to be removed over the years. Riprap does not cure that. It's just the nature of living in those kinds of areas. And I also see that condition that we placed on this developer, the 1 to 1.5 is huge. They're willing to retain that water on their property and not detain, retain it. They're willing to keep it on their property, and I think that they ultimately would like to use that. So I don't see that as a condition that is going to sully the area. If the county wants to come out, at least from my perspective, and wants to put curb, gutter, and sidewalk in my neighborhood, I'm your huckleberry. I would love it. It would be wonderful. I'm telling you right now, it would be wonderful. And there would be a lot of parents who would love to see that. But that's, again, I digress. So I don't see that. And I agree with, I don't see an issue with housing type. I don't think that that's a problem. But I still don't like the long, straight streets. I can tell you right now, we're dealing with that in numerous places in some of the older subdivisions. On my own street, we had to put speed bumps to slow people down, and they still don't slow people down. On any given day, people will pass my house more than once doing 50+ miles an hour. And I live in a residential area, so it's certainly a problem. So I like to see neighborhoods that are designed with traffic calming features built into them, not long straight streets that give kids an opportunity to see how fast they can go in a short distance. So there's again sort of my 2 cents on those things, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will go to Commissioner Jung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm so glad that the chairman and Commissioner Hill brought up the question about no curbs and gutters, and that is something that needs to be brought back to this commission for policy recommendations, because not to mention all the reasons just spoken by the commissioners, we also know with the inability to move our water, we have those microcells that hello, Lemon Valley. The way that place was built out did not help. It actually hurt the situation we had with those microcells. So I'm all in favor of curb and gutter too, mostly from the ability to move and reclaim water and protect property from flash floods based on microcells. So I think saying no curbs and gutters is going so far backwards when we're looking at a place that has this type of density pre-existing in the area, and the type of traffic pre-existing in that area. So please, staff, that needs to be something that is brought back to this board ASAP, that is more informed on best practices and principles for all the reasons we all just brought up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have a couple questions for staff and for the appellant. I'm going to go with Mr. Pelham, I'm going to go with the appellant first. I apologize. Mr. Gordon, if I can ask you a couple questions.
Oh.
Mr. Gordon, on your plan, please go up to the actual layout. There you go. Thank you. You spoke about intended improvements, obviously, that you would adhere to section UU of the plan to get to that final map, which is, acceptable traffic calming measures, what are the intended improvements? Because as the vice chair has pointed out, the long straight streets, the chicane, we don't see any chicanes in there. We don't see any bulb outs or neck downs. We don't see any curved streets other than the one along the two along the bottom along the Silver Hills Parkway. What's the intent in regards to really address that item UU?
Once again, for the record, Mike Ray, the Christie Corporation. Typically, we would design those with the final map once we know, and a lot of that plays into it. As Mr. Smith alluded to earlier, there's always some shifts between final map and tentative map. So once we know, for example, the exact product type, those dimensions, some of the lotting can shift. That can be accomplished. You can do bulb outs to add some additional landscaping within the streets themselves. You can put in like the mini roundabouts, for lack of a better term. It will really kind of depend on how we shift everything, how we tweak even with grading and whatnot, how we will place those. But really, in the end, we typically do that with final map per the conditions.
Okay. And so right now, what we're looking at is 358, correct?
Correct.
For units. And potentially with that shifting, as we talk about setbacks and we settle in on really what we need to be, where we need to be, and the size of streets and widths and whatnot, we could lose potentially a few homes.
Typically, that's not unusual, yeah.
Okay, so we're looking, to gain that acreage, to gain that size. 358 is really our max right now, based upon this very rudimentary, very simple layout, correct?
Correct.
Just to fit into the footprint. And as we continue to manipulate, we'll find ourselves maybe 340. Maybe say we lose, 18%. 18 homes or whatever we would lose there. Okay, and then specifically, what are your intentions? Obviously, when we go back and you look at the last slide, and when you go to the very last slide of yours that you were on, that Mr. Pelham was on prior to right there, the one right there. And Mr. Pelham isn't wrong, and this board was, this is what we were educated on when this plan was brought to us in October of 2019. And we felt compelled that this was really something that was going to meet the nature of that community. And, understanding that this is going forward, what you have presented in the tentative map does not represent anything what we initially had this discussion about. And that is frustrating to me and disappointing to me. However, I'm hoping that, you've heard the concerns here today, that if this board does elect to move forward, that those concerns are addressed. Because to lose that nature of that community, to lose that would be a disappointment. And I don't disagree with the vice chairman. I believe when him and his wife purchased their home in Spanish Springs multiple years ago, they sat there by themselves out in the middle of nowhere, and they had V ditches, and it was fine. Now they find themselves almost in the middle of Sparks, with an in and out probably at the end of their street. And so I don't think V ditches are necessarily the way we should be going. I think that is a way of the past. I think we do need to do curb and gutter. However, when you talk about curb and gutter, that is going to be something that the county is going to have to maintain on an ongoing basis outside of what an HOA would do. And so those kind of issues do bring up concerns for me as we talk about infrastructure needs and challenges and runoff and what we've seen, especially in the North Valleys. From my standpoint, I can't say that you haven't met the requirements set forth. I can say, though, however, I am disappointed that we are having a discussion about a tentative map that doesn't look anything like we would initially discussed, and that's bothersome to me. However, I'm hoping and I'm optimistic that you've heard the comments here today from this board and the concerns to move forward effectively. Because what is one of the challenges that we have here in Northern Nevada is we consistently are losing the rural nature of our community, and we're consistently losing the understanding of who we are and the heritage of what we are. but we have to measure that with also the ability to continue to grow and grow effectively. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us, but I understand there's a necessity to maximize benefits and growth for the community and the developer, but at the same time, not lose our heritage and what we've come to truly develop around. And so, I find myself in a place of disposition in the sense that we worked on this in 2019 amongst a massive point of opposition from that community out there, promising them a number of these things, yet here we are having a discussion about something that doesn't look anything like what we were talking about in 2019. So those are my concerns. You've answered that. Hopefully we can see that at the final map. But I see Commissioner.
I sent a picture that the constituent, let me turn on my
All
mic,
right.
Mr. Chairman. I sent a picture that a constituent sent me
Okay.
from a lower neighborhood
Okay.
in that area, and I'm hoping, did you get it, Ms. Lewinhagen?
Yep.
Would you put it up on the screen for us?
They're working on it right now for you. Give us 1 second. Do you want to give us some edification
Sure,
about what
you
this
bet.
is?
You bet. As soon as it comes up. What this is a constituent out there of whom I know. He actually, I don't think he lives in the neighborhood any longer. He was a TM firefighter. When the listeners came to us, this was one of the things that the listeners have agreed, and this is kind of this is the poster child of why V-ditches do not work. There's and this is pre-development, by the way. And so what this means is that as you guys start to hold back that water on that property, these kinds of things will be mitigated, because you won't see nearly as much water flowing down to those lower properties. And here's one other thing that I will tell you, and people say, well, more development's going to equal more runoff. Spanish Springs in 1986, 87, when we moved out there, had more flooding than it does today because we have a formalized stormwater utility. You couldn't even get across where Eagle Canyon and Pyramid and it's now La Posada. You could not get across that area. I guarantee you. I lived out there. You had to go around. You could not, and Pyramid Highway just to the north washed out. So again, poster child against V-ditches of how this does not work well.
Mr. Chair, may I interject? I'm worried that we're just getting a little far afield of the hearing question presented. I agree that V-ditches and drainage are a very important topic, but I just ask the commission to consider moving back towards the approval
All right.
or disapproval of the planning commission decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam DA. So, Commissioner Jung, do you have any final comments?
No, I really don't. I can hear both sides on this. I also would remind, as part of the, one of the things that we were hoping that this would demand also was that missing middle of affordability, and I'm concerned that we make sure we balance, right, livability and definitely not subsidizing later by government getting in there and fixing. But, people in the private industry know their market and know what people want. We don't. So I'm very, very sketchy about that, because I don't want anybody to tell me what the way I'm going to achieve my dreams. I hope that makes some kind of sense there. But I think it's important that we had a frank conversation, and this is the way it really is supposed to be, Mr. Chairman. So bravo. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing nothing further from the commission, we've had discussion from both staff and the appellant. At this time, I will open it up for a motion for either approval or support or denial, support of the denial or rejection of the denial. So with that, I will move forward.
I'm happy to make the motion. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Board of County Commissioners reverse the decision of the Planning Commission, approve the tentative subdivision map case number WTM 21-006 for Lifestyle Homes T&D LLC, with the conditions of approval included as Attachment D to this report. Having made all 10 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code Section 110.608.25.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second for the purposes of discussion only.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Open discussion, Commissioner Hertel.
Thank you. So, Commissioner Hill, does that include the conditions that the applicant has agreed on, that they're going to make some changes, and that and I don't want to call it substantive changes, but that changes will be made to address the concerns that have been brought forward today?
Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Vice Chairman. Yes, I would like to just revise my motion to include the two conditions that the applicant offered at today's hearing. So including the industry standard of wiring to be solar ready, vehicle hookup ready, and battery ready with each home, and endeavor in its sole discretion to include in the final maps additional innovative amenities and design elements described in the Silver Hills Development Standards Handbook, which may include additional trails, parks, landscaping, agri-hood facilities, community gardens, and roadway design, and that also the applicant work with the staff as well as the commission on the roadway concerns, the straight away roadway concerns, that they meet the what was outlined in the handbook.
Okay.
Traffic calming, excuse me, thank you.
All right, so I've got a motion. Does the seconder agree with that?
The seconder reluctantly agrees. I'm holding, I will agree.
Okay. All right, seeing no further comment, I have a motion and a second. We will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Herman being in the opposition. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. That concludes our business for today. We are on to our final public comment. This is item 18. Mr. Manager.
Public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
All right. Madam Clerk, will you please call public comment?
Ann Buja? Buja? Sorry.
Welcome, Mrs. Buja.
Good afternoon. I can take this off?
Yes, you may.
I don't have hat and hair, I just have mask face. I'm going to move this down a little bit. My name is Ann Buja, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak today. I am associated with St. Thomas Aquinas Cathedral and with the St. Vincent de Paul Society. And my head personally is back on that whole housing thing. We've had 2 huge housing issues dealt with today. So I'm going to ask you to please pull your attention back to item 11 and the monies that are coming in. I had a huge thing planned, but I'm just going to stress 2 topics right now. We volunteers at St. Vincent Society witness firsthand the tremendous hardships and devastation, that have resulted from the COVID pandemic. We listen to the stories of the people who are suffering due to the loss of employment and increasing numbers of those who are finding themselves homeless. So our first and most important topic, affordable housing. Duh. Our county is experiencing a housing crisis, and if there is one thing we hear over and over and over again, is that our residents of Washoe County are lacking access to affordable housing. We consistently see elderly and disabled people who are spending their entire Social Security allotment on rent, single moms who can't afford both the cost of housing and the cost of childcare. I strongly urge you to consider the Nevada Housing Coalition's recommendations of increasing multifamily developments and money set aside for permanent supportive housing, the preservation of existing housing, and funds to improve and provide incentives for home ownership. And that really does take up my time. Please, please consider this recommendation. Washoe County is long overdue for some radical changes, and these ARP funds provide us with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to address some of these issues at their most basic core. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Buja.
Aaron Massengab.
Welcome, Ms. Massengab.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I wanted to go back to item number 17 briefly, talking about the ingress and egress of subdivisions based on fire safety. If I could have the overhead for a moment, please.
Can we get the overhead, please?
I don't know if you can see this. This picture is a picture of last summer that a friend of mine sent to me from behind her home on Red Rock Road. So this is disturbing that we're looking at doing a subdivision that will have two ways, inside and out, when this is what they look at every summer. That's her home, that's the fire behind it. I'd like to move on, though, to once again request from this commission that we agendize and pass a resolution to end the public health emergency and to ban vaccine passports or any sort of vaccine verification. Vaccine verification is now met Nevada, and we are now looking at discriminating and segregating people based on vaccine status and medical protocols. And I want to end with quoting a friend of mine and the CEO of Urban Global Health Alliance. Not long ago, Black Americans could not sit for a meal in a restaurant with others because they were considered unclean. Black Americans could not swim in a pool or drink from a water fountain because they were considered unclean. And now, 60 years after Brown versus the Board of Education had finally declared that separate is not equal, the ugliness and violation of bigotry and segregation is back at our door. Current public health policies have brought back a Jim Crow system that has Black Americans and others being told that they are not allowed through the door because they are now considered unclean. We must be vigilant to never tolerate discrimination in any form and to rigorously protect all human life. And through that lens, every policy and position, past, present, and future, must be scrutinized to rectify and ensure that we never go back to the struggles of the days when Black Americans or others were deemed unclean. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Massengab.
Cindy Martinez.
Ms. Martinez, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for confirming my belief and understanding that money can buy any influence and any approval as long as it's sprinkled and spread widely and deeply enough. So I recall a few meetings ago, Commissioner Jung specifically cited to the point that this commission imposes conditions on various requests for approval, and there's no means or mechanism to ensure that, I think it was a landscaping issue at one of the developments, and she pointed out that there was no means or mechanism, no follow-up, no enforcement to ensure that they were complying with the terms of whatever conditions had been placed on their approvals. And so as I hear that there were kind of a basket of conditions that were placed upon the listener family's project that's not specific, and I heard you all raise very legitimate concerns, which gave me hope that there would be a vote from Commissioner Von Hartung and Commissioner Chair Lucy, that you would place a vote that was in line with your articulated comments. And once again, your articulated comments are in conflict with your vote, and your vote is representative of the money that you receive from the moneyed interest in this county to further in their agendas, which is unfortunate, because what's going to happen to the North Valleys, it's going to go the way of Spanish Springs, Palomino Valley, all areas of that we've had with open space. And interestingly enough, I heard with interest Commissioner Hartung mentioned that there was flooding out in Spanish Springs before they put in some kind of drainage. And I remember that the summer of 1997, my own street where I used to live out there in the Hawco homes was flooded. I would posit to this commission and commissions in the past is that you have built on floodplains. Of course it's going to flood. And God only knows what's going to happen to the projects out in the southeast meadows that is built on marshland, pasture marshland. But you know what? It's not just this commission that signed on these or the city councils, but it's of the last few decades. The other thing I would say is I support my friend Erin Massengale's call for an agendized item to declare an end to the public health emergency, as we've been asking for these eight months. There is a new heightened concern about what's happening with the vulnerability of vaccinated people being more vulnerable. ADE is going to rear its ugly head. People will be dying, and you won't need to build more houses because the houses that are now here will be empty. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have nobody else signed in.
All right, seeing no further public comment, we'll close public comment. We will move on to item 19. This is our final Commissioners, County Managers announcements. Mr. Manager, do you have anything?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, Commissioners, do you have anything? Anybody? Commissioner Jung, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
All right, seeing none, we are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.